Along with the system emerged a mysterious force. One of the cultivators observed spatial anomalies across the island, prompting another to agree, and mentioned that despite being in the mysterious immortal realm, flight across the island remained entirely impossible, while a third commented that the sensation resembled entry into a super high-level realm, the kind of place that even sect leaders approached with hesitation, as though they had wandered into a Kaguya dimension. It likely had something to do with Yi Feng, and there remained nothing particularly remarkable about his techniques. Meanwhile, Yi Feng remarked on the absence of others, then summoned the flying sword. He laughed and declared that he could fly, probably feeling like he had just unlocked a hidden Naruto bloodline. He made an effort to involve the old men and women in deceiving the disciples to help recruit them, though that hardly seemed necessary anymore, because with the sword, he no longer felt weak, and he could absolutely convince others that he was a cultivator, which technically was only about 50% accurate. A few moments later, he cleared his throat. He mentioned that he had something important to disclose and asked them to be mentally prepared. The reason for hiding his identity before had been weariness from constant fighting and killing, so he had concealed his strength and chosen to live quietly in Jiangping City, avoiding Demon Slayer theatrics in favor of peace. Everyone listened closely, uneasy. He summoned a golden light. He used it to form a halo above his head. He revealed that, in truth, he was not a mortal, but an exceptional cultivator, the kind typically accompanied by phoenixes and divine beasts. He was nervous. He questioned whether they were surprised, and the others responded with disbelief, treating it as a joke because it made sense, as if he were casually claiming Goku might power up. He wondered what they meant, and whether those people, seeing his intentions to establish a sect, had already assumed he was an immortal cultivator. He speculated that it was entirely possible, because under normal logic, no mere mortal could create a sect and gain recognition, and that explained the eagerness of the old men and women who had followed him to the island. It all made sense, clearer than a hunter license in Killua's pocket. He cleared his throat and stated that since they now knew he was a cultivator, he wished to announce that they could bring their relatives, friends, and descendants to follow him, and he would teach them to the best of his ability. They questioned whether he was being serious, whether he was joking, whether he would personally take on disciples, and he confirmed that he was not joking and would accept 100, because if he was already cosplaying as the founder of a major clan, why not go all in? One of the cultivators requested that Lu Qingshan give him a child, while another lamented that his father had died when he was 6, leaving him without siblings. Yi Feng considered that even though he was an empty shell, simply standing on a flying sword with a halo above his head was enough to make others believe he was a peerless expert, a budget version of a heavenly patriarch. So, with that group of men and women, the task of accepting 100 disciples should be handled easily. A few hours later, everyone sprang into action to begin recruitment. One commented that their father was blessed, while a mother told her child to behave well, because if he became Yi Feng's disciple, his destiny would be reshaped, rewritten like an MC's backstory halfway through a manhwa. Meanwhile, a father advised his son to listen attentively, to act as if on a pilgrimage when he entered, to cast aside any arrogance because it would do him no good there, and to simply remember that he was fortunate to be present that day. On the other hand, Zhongting contacted Yi Feng and informed him that many people had gathered in the plaza to worship him, and he questioned whether Zhongting had just said many. Zhongting hesitated, prompting Yi Feng to suspect an issue. Zhongting said that he wanted to ask whether Yi Feng was truly a cultivator. Yi Feng replied that he would understand when the time came, while thinking that lying to that little guy was too difficult, so it would be better to wait until the day he could actually cultivate and show him the truth with his own eyes, preferably during a dramatic reveal complete with heavenly tribulation overhead. He opened his doors and stepped outside. He was stunned by the crowd and concluded that the old men and women had made it happen. At that moment, everyone before him were heaven's favored ones. The weakest had reached the human immortal realm, and it wasn't because they had always been so powerful, but because the previous immortal irrigation had caused cultivators across the continent to level up en masse, like everyone respawned with S-rank potential. To exaggerate, those groups of prodigies had been plucked directly from the trash heap outside their former martial sect. Suddenly, Chi Yitong's father warned him not to eat something and told him to throw it away immediately or else the CI family would be disgraced, but Chi Yitong insisted that he was truly hungry, channeling every overeager shonen side character ever. The others believed that such trash had no right to be there, while the father issued repeated apologies to Yi Feng. Yi Feng assured them that it was fine and instructed Chi Yitong to come forward. He cleared his throat and stated that he should examine his potential first, while noting internally that the system had already detected him as a super trash talent. But with so many eyes watching, he, as the sect leader, had to perform accordingly, playing the part of a masked sage from a long-lost sect. He declared that the talent was average, but with guidance, he could become a suitable candidate, which made Chi Yitong's father laugh and proclaimed that the Chi family was about to rise. Yi Feng reflected that if that old man ever learned he was nothing but an empty shell, there was no telling what his reaction would be, but if he could successfully take in 100 disciples, then he would be considered a true cultivator. So he needed to move fast and accept someone, even if he was only wearing the armor of a god with no stats to back it. But the system abruptly notified that his new disciple failed to meet the required standard, so the task progress still lingered at 3 out of 100, and he questioned whether disciple acceptance even demanded qualifications. It clarified that the minimum talent threshold was normal qualification, which made him exhale in relief, figuring that was manageable, and prompted it to activate talent detection for everyone present. The system responded that every single person present ranked as super trash, so he concluded that the group of old men had become completely unreliable, probably one power-up away from collapsing like a filler villain squad. He declared the day over and told them to disperse, prompting everyone to ask why and whether they were really worse than the fat guy. Old Xing ordered them to shut up and labeled them a bunch of ungrateful fools, while another elder challenged whether any of them dared to contradict Yi Feng's judgment and urged them to get the hell out. They pleaded with Yi Feng not to take it personally and claimed it wasn't worth getting upset with children, and Yi Feng replied that it was fine and that he understood, while recognizing that they were just as useless as he was and that their eagerness to cultivate was predictable. Although this wasn't exactly a My Hero Academia summer camp. One of the old men still ventured to ask if he hadn't claimed he wanted to take in 100 disciples, and Yi Feng responded that it wasn't a matter of refusing them, but that the talent level of those youngsters was truly abysmal. So abysmal, they barely qualified as side character tier in a cultivation webtoon. The elders insisted that these young ones could eventually count among the peak-level experts on the Xianjiang continent, and questioned who else could rise, if not them. Then Chi Yitong's father abruptly brought up his own son. Yi Feng answered that Chi Yitong was an exception, reasoning that he had accepted him in front of everyone and couldn't exactly backtrack, which felt uncannily like getting assigned a starter Pokemon and discovering it was a Magikarp. Moments later, Chi Yitong formally paid respects to Yi Feng. Yi Feng acknowledged that teaching a disciple who couldn't even help him complete his task felt like a headache, but where there is a beginning, there should be an end. He instructed Chi Yitong to take the recipe book. As was well known, everyone had their own path, and if he was such a dedicated eater, then maybe he could actually accomplish something on the path of eating. And since that book was authored by Yi Feng himself, he could take it and study it thoroughly, then return upon comprehending it. Although it wasn't exactly the scroll of forbidden techniques, Chi Yitong expressed thanks and promised he wouldn't disappoint, and Yi Feng accepted that and wished him well, while reflecting that since he couldn't cultivate anyway, they might as well hold him steady with something like that. Time moved on, and the rest continued exercising on the plaza. They danced along to a song. Yi Feng observed that half a month had passed, and he still hadn't come across a single person with normal qualifications. He realized he had overestimated this world, never expecting that the majority would turn out to be total trash, and he sighed and acknowledged that he might as well stay a salted fish, basically waving his retirement flag like an early episode sensei. Then, the system sent him another notification. He immediately ducked into a corner and demanded that the useless system show itself. The system reported that he had now run a sect for half a month without accepting any qualified disciples. As such, 10 flyers had been prepared, and had asked whether he would accept that small token of affection. He accepted the flyers. The system confirmed and generated a colorful flyer. It also created a basic version. Yi Feng remarked that the flyers were unbelievably corny, but he had no better option at the moment unless he wanted to roleplay as a back-alley recruiter from a parody manhwa. He questioned how exactly to use the flyers, and it clarified that as long as he held one and moved forward without conscious intent, it would randomly land in the hands of those who met his criteria. He complimented the function and wondered if the people who received them would have to show up and worship him, and the system confirmed that was indeed the case. He declared that it better not be tricking him again, and the system instantly signed off. Feng focused, and the flyers in his grip shimmered into starlight and scattered into the air, and soon after, 10 of them had been released. A few days later, he groaned that the system had duped him again. The flyers had been out for days, yet no one had come to pledge allegiance when old Chiong abruptly summoned him. He reported that the Sect Alliance's initiation ceremony was about to begin and they should get ready to leave, and Feng admitted he had nearly forgotten about it. The initiation ceremony, to put it plainly, functioned as a recruitment event for disciples, hosted by the Sect Alliance, with all sects attending to select the candidates they wanted, and even though the Heaven and Earth sect was a 9th grade sect, they still held a token spot in the process, which basically meant they were showing up with the energy of a filler squad crashing a Sanin showdown. There was also potential, since disciples with normal qualifications weren't considered valuable there, and he proposed they attend the ceremony. Shortly after, they arrived at the venue. Crowds had gathered, demonstrating their skills. One of the participants explained that he merely messed up the swordplay and asked the examiner for another chance, and the examiner challenged whether he had improvised the technique. Another denied it, while another grumbled that he was too strict. Old Chiong noted that the event seemed to be wrapping up, and the elite sects had already claimed the gifted disciples and taken off, and Feng acknowledged that he had done his best, even though the flying sword speed could still use a boost. But shortly after they departed from Jiangping, they nearly crashed into a tree, so they slowed down, though the wind still blasted them the whole way and left him with a migraine, because apparently his cultivation journey came bundled with motion sickness as a hidden debuff. At this point, only a few 8th and 9th grade sects remained, and the leftover disciples were the crooked bunch no one else wanted. He struggled to describe it and recognized that the sensation was making him uneasy. Feng considered that even the sect masters of the 8th and 9th grade sects carried a profound aura and appeared formidable, while he remained a mortal forced to impersonate a cultivator just to blend into events like these. So the pressure on him felt immense. He registered a flicker of surprise when a cultivator glanced his way. He concluded that he must look terrifying. He cleared his throat, and while calling old Chiong, he explained that despite his immense strength, he had to keep a low profile and avoid stirring up trouble, which clearly ranked as the most difficult part of being a hidden boss with zero cultivation. He pressed if old Chiong heard him, and old Chiong confirmed. Moments later, the host announced the completion of the 8th grade sect selection and called upon the members of the 9th grade sect to take the stage. A sect master declared that his Heavenly Moon sect wanted a specific disciple and wondered whether the others had any objections. Another sect master replied that he should hold on, as his Demon Heavenly sect also wanted the same disciple. The first sect master challenged if the other dared oppose the Heavenly Moon sect and suspected cowardice, while others pointed out that they were all scrapping for the few good disciples left, basically a classic auction house chaos, before the real bids began. Old Chiong wondered if they should step in, but Feng insisted there was no rush. He remarked that they could go ahead and snatch all the disciples they wanted, as he had no intention of getting involved anyway, just leave one for him. The initiation ceremony concluded shortly after. Old Chiong called to Feng, who brushed it off, saying there was no urgency and he should let him finish reading that paragraph, because obviously, nothing in life topped looking scholarly in the middle of disaster. But old Chiong reminded him that all the disciples had already been chosen and not a single one remained, and he demanded why that wasn't mentioned earlier. He questioned whether the whole journey had been for nothing and what he was supposed to do now. Suddenly, a sect master instructed his disciples to return to the sect, and Feng assessed that the 9 heavenly sect had a long-standing history and plenty of opportunities to pick disciples, and this time they seemed to have scooped up quite a few. He cleared his throat and introduced himself as the sect master of the Heaven and Earth sect, explaining that he made the effort to come all this way but didn't manage to receive even one disciple, then asked if some kind of arrangement could be made to spare him the humiliation. The sect master appeared unsure about granting him one. He added that things weren't easy for anyone, and he indeed looked miserable, so given the circumstances, he would hand one over. Yifeng questioned if that was serious and thanked him, while the sect master laughed and claimed it was fine since everyone there was basically a bunch of swindlers anyway, a scene worthy of a cultivation world sitcom. It was just one girl, disqualified due to poor qualifications, so he would pass her over. It was Su Yunyun. Yifeng observed that she was tall and beautiful, but unfortunately in that world, talent reigned supreme, so her looks alone meant nothing. Without talent, she was someone to be discarded at will. He figured he should check her out. He celebrated inwardly because it was the exact kind of ordinary qualification he'd been hoping for, the type of mediocrity that wouldn't jeopardize his mortal persona. He concluded that, true to the Sect Alliance initiation ceremony standards, even the lowest qualification counted as average, and the higher quality disciples weren't even registered by the system. Still, she was a significant upgrade compared to the elderly bunch from Jiangping City. Meanwhile, Su Yunyun reflected bitterly that she had fallen so far that even a sect of such low standing could casually discard her. In her previous life as an Immortal Supreme, she stood at the summit above all, but she had been betrayed and murdered before reincarnating. To accelerate her cultivation recovery and pursue revenge against that traitor, she intended to join a sect and cultivate in seclusion. However, her body carried a hidden constitution, and the blind evaluators at the Sect Alliance failed to recognize it, ranking her at the bottom. Now she found herself passed between bottom-tier sects like a top-level NPC, stranded in a tutorial village. Yifeng inquired about her name, but she remained silent. The sect master mentioned that Yifeng had asked her something and wondered if she hadn't heard it, while Yifeng insisted that they should just let it go. Su Yunyun reflected that she had once been an empress and questioned why she should observe social niceties with people like that now. She reasoned that she only needed a peaceful place to recover, so any location would suffice. She gave her name, and Yifeng welcomed her to the Heaven and Earth sect. She remained silent, and he interpreted that as tacit agreement. The trip had not been wasted after all. Moments later, they rode in a carriage. Old Qing handled the reins. Yifeng addressed Su Yunyun and remarked that he understood she might feel emotional after being passed on by the Nine Heavenly sect, which made sense, not unlike a player getting booted from a top-tier guild. But she shouldn't feel discouraged, because although the Nine Heavenly sect's leader wasn't weak, he himself was also very strong. Su Yunyun questioned internally if he truly believed he was strong and judged him amusing. As for her emotions, she noted there were none, because transferring from one trash sect to another stirred nothing. Still, the boy was visually pleasant and had a knack for mood management. So once she, the Empress, returned to power, she might consider supporting him. She foresaw that his Heaven and Earth sect could very well flourish under her future prestige, possibly coasting straight to the top in her wake. Half a month later, Old Qing announced that Jiangping City lay just ahead, and Yifeng thanked him for his effort. Su Yunyun peeked through the window and was startled by the sight of an old man walking his livestock. She recognized the powerful aura and wondered if he was an immortal. She judged that encountering such a powerful being in a place like that was entirely unexpected. It wasn't just any immortal. Even the human immortal and earth immortal ranks couldn't compare, so they needed to tread carefully and avoid provoking him. She advised that they pull over, and Yifeng questioned why. She instructed again that they should make way for the old man, and he concluded that she truly honored the elderly and protected the young, a moment straight out of a Cultivation World PSA. He agreed, and Old Qing complied. Yifeng greeted the old man and asked about his shabby clothes, and Su Yunyun questioned what he was doing. She wondered if he had any idea who the old man was, what his cultivation level could be, and whether making blunt comments might lead to disaster. She judged that the old man was approaching and mentally cursed Yifeng as a clueless mortal who dragged her into danger with a careless remark. And even if he wanted to die, he shouldn't take her with him. She resolved that she must escape. But the old man greeted Yifeng casually. She rubbed her eyes in disbelief. She wondered if they knew each other or knew each other well. Relief swept over her as she watched their friendly exchange. Probably the strangest friendly old man meets bug-tier mortal encounter she had ever seen. The old man waved them off. She asked who he was and if they were close, and he confirmed they were acquainted, but admitted he forgot the man's name and knew him only as a livestock dealer. She accepted that many true experts retreat into ordinary life to hone their mindset or rest from endless combat, and in her previous life as an Immortal Supreme, she too had longed for such a retreat. She realized she alone could discern the old man's true identity. She judged that the clueless and fearless boy had been absurdly lucky, because if the old man hadn't respected his mundane life, those reckless remarks would have killed him at least 800 times over. Then, it struck her. She sensed a nirvana revolution and judged the revelation staggering. Due to her 9 revolutions heavenly body, she had reached the Immortal Supreme realm in just a few centuries, and if she completed the 9 stages, she could ascend to the God realm, a rare cultivation cheat code. But nirvana came with severe costs, stripping one of all 5 senses and reducing them to mortal form, only to be reborn stronger afterward. Her current condition stemmed from being assassinated during the 7th revolution in her previous life, but it was only a matter of time before she reclaimed her former peak. What she needed most now was a place of absolute safety. Su Yunyun inquired whether he could arrange a safer place for her, and he reassured her there was no need to worry about lodging, instructing her simply to return with him to the Heaven and Earth Sect. She declined and clarified her request was for a location devoid of others. That raised his suspicion she had no intention of going back with him. She mulled over how to explain to someone so feeble that she possessed a 9 revolution heavenly body. And more importantly, her concern involved personal safety. She remarked that she had been unwell lately, found crowds uncomfortable, and needed only a few days. As long as he ensured her safety, she would certainly join the Heaven and Earth Sect once recovered, and he concluded that the issue was menstruation. She requested an explanation of menstruation, and he brushed it off, comparing it to how seasoned cultivators avoided pill poisoning by pretending their furnaces never exploded. The topic, in his view, was best left untouched. Since that was the case, she agreed to relocate to his martial arts gym. She assessed her strength had vanished completely, leaving her no choice but to trust him. Feng contacted old Qing and instructed him to return ahead, stating he would escort Su Yunyun to the martial arts gym, which old Qing accepted. Feng noticed her expression never softened during the journey, concluding she had not accepted him. Perhaps she had seen far stronger cultivators during the initiation ceremony. Still, a person with normal qualifications was rare, and he could not risk losing her. He summoned his great flying sword, resolving to reveal his strongest asset and let the girl witness it. He proclaimed that she should observe how impressive he truly was, though in reality he rarely enjoyed showing off. Once she joined the Heaven and Earth Sect, she would understand, so she should climb aboard. Su Yunyun stepped onto the flying sword. She evaluated it as merely a flying sword, something considered junk within the cultivation world. Yet someone here had the nerve to flaunt it. Once she completed a single revolution toward nirvana and unveiled her immortal sword, he would panic. A bystander praised Feng's abilities, another echoed the sentiment, affirming he was indeed extraordinary, a peerless expert. A third emphasized that it was a flying sword. Feng expressed thanks repeatedly. Su Yunyun concluded that this was, after all, a mortal realm, where even a flying sword could be revered as divine. She wondered how they might react upon encountering a genuine immortal. That discomfort had begun the moment they entered the city, but she attributed it to a mere illusion. Soon after, they arrived at the martial arts gym. Su Yunyun picked up on something faintly unusual but could not pinpoint it. Feng invited her inside. She scanned the space in disbelief. She remarked that it looked pitiful and demanded whether he truly believed it was secure. She insisted that he had described it as solid gold. Even in the palace from her previous life, she would never dare to use such terms, so she challenged how he had the gall to use them for such a place. He confirmed she had seen the martial arts gym for herself, so she should stay there while he returned to the Heaven and Earth Sect and came back for her in a few days. She deemed it acceptable. This realm was different, and if she let trifles like that anger her, she risked dying from sheer frustration. Feng's eyes widened upon spotting Skeleton and the others. He greeted their return. Skeleton panicked. He darted off, explaining that he had finally scraped together a few gold coins and brought a pretty woman to share some wine, only for his master to catch him. In a panic, he pondered what to do just as Ao Qing mirrored the concern. Meanwhile, Feng reasoned that Su Yunyun might feel afraid staying alone, so he should arrange for someone to guard her, which would put his mind at ease. She found it surprising and hadn't anticipated him picking up on the fleeting emotion she had let slip when entering the city under so much pressure. Taking a closer look, she noticed he had an attractive face, and were it not for their gap in status, he might have passed for a suitable companion. While contemplating that, he nearly forgot the need to assign someone to look after her. A disciple with normal qualifications was too rare to lose. he puzzled over what to do. Moments later, Qing alerted Skeleton that their master was after them, prompting tears. Skeleton wailed. He kissed the lady's hand. He vowed she should wait for him so they could dance and sing again that night, delivering the promise with the flair of a K-drama extra destined to die by episode 2. Feng suddenly suspected he was exploiting women again. Skeleton denied any wrongdoing, but Feng countered that he had seen everything. In the future, if he caught him flirting again, he wouldn't let it slide. He could tolerate it, sure, but the point he wanted to hammer in was that without the diamond, there was no handling porcelain. When he checked if that registered, Skeleton confessed it didn't. Feng clarified that messing with girls was off limits without the necessary equipment, and if by some miracle one actually took the bait, she should be the one to tell him. When he raised the question of how to fix that situation, Feng advised they go reflect on it, since he had a task lined up, and if handled properly, there would be a gold coin in it. Moments later, they returned to the martial arts gym and greeted Su Yunyun. She made it clear she didn't want protection, but Feng overruled her and pressed what would happen if she ran into real trouble. She figured that even though she was at the first revolution of Nirvana, it was hardly low enough to need guarding by a mortal like him. Still, Nirvana required abstinence, and it wasn't so bad to have someone around to fetch things. Suddenly, Skeleton introduced himself, throwing around titles like all-powerful, majestic, elegant skull great, or scumbag, pledging himself as her unshakable guardian, the kind who wouldn't let a single hair get harmed even if the sky caved in. She questioned if the greasy, hideous idiot was really the one meant to protect her. At the very least, Feng could have brought someone normal. She shut the door in Skeleton's face, and while the bear bemoaned that his love life had ended before it started, Qing and Nightbreeze commented that heaven clearly envied him. As junior brothers, they resolved to help him through heartbreak, and with the bear agreeing that they had to figure something out, Su Yunyun quietly concluded that they were all insufferable. Shortly after, Skeleton was wiping the windows while she cultivated inside. The next morning, he played the guitar outside her window in a pitiful attempt at serenade. By afternoon, he remarked that her endless talking had somehow grabbed his attention. Su Yunyun realized 2 full days had passed. Feng had truly saddled her with a weirdo, and his voice resembled a ghost's wail, likely pulled straight from some cursed music arc buried in a forgotten shoujo series. Earlier, he had handed her boiled water and dubbed it a token of care. When night fell, Skeleton cleared his throat, catching her off guard. He announced that love was trash, unstoppable when it hit, gone for good once flushed. At that point, Su Yunyun decided she couldn't stand the runt any longer. She pressed if he wasn't sick of himself yet, and he doubled down, insisting she was too fragile to go without his watch. She accused him of being a nuisance, and when she challenged what it would take for him to disappear, he shot back at her nerve for calling him annoying, stressing that he even skipped Xiao Yue's 18-year-old coming-of-age ceremony at Yihong Academy just to care for her. She wondered if he even knew what Immortal Supreme was. He fired back, clueless, and as she considered how far ignorance could stretch, she explained that was it. She didn't need his protection. If trouble really struck, it wouldn't be something someone like him could handle. He threw it back that she looked down on him too much and concluded she wasn't worthy of his affection. As a final note, he reminded her to hide in the martial arts gym if anything actually happened, then took his leave. Su Yunyun remarked that the shorty was finally gone, brushing off the notion of guarding someone without cultivation as absurd. She scoffed at the martial arts gym, tossing out a doubtful jab about its supposed solid gold quality. She tossed a sneer at the tag-along who didn't even register as human, claiming one more look might fry her eyes. She declared she had no intention of staying in that dump. She weighed her options and leaned toward leaving. As she stepped out, a cultivator addressed her as Immortal Supreme Yunyun, noting her survival and the long passage of time. She demanded to know if they served Chen Yizhen, and they confirmed it. She recalled how Chen Yizhen had betrayed her, driven a blade through her back, and ended her life in a past she hadn't expected him to uncover so fast, let alone track her rebirth this quickly. One of the men explained that they were here to help Immortal Supreme Yizhen clear his conscience and erase future obstacles. Su Yunyun replied that if Chen Yizhen himself had come, it might be different, but with only the 3 trash before her, she demanded whether they seriously thought they could take her down, all while deciding to stall with bravado. One of them wondered aloud whether she still believed herself to be who she once was, hinting that they knew everything. She had once been able to crush them with a flick, so now she forced herself to focus, estimating that even though her senses were dead, all three radiated as heavenly immortals. She calculated that staying inside the martial arts gym meant certain death, since no mortal shack could block three beings like them. Then one of the men told her to brace for death, while another broke into frenzied laughter. Su Yunyun shot back with a question on how she could possibly be unprepared after rebirth. One of them stated she had fled. Another followed up that they had expected this and planned ahead. She hadn't gotten far. They gave chase. Beyond Jiangping City, Su Yunyun sucked in breath, having fled as far as she could. Suddenly, one of the pursuers called out that they had her, while another dared her to find anywhere left to run. With her cultivation gone, there was no path left for escape. She caught the astral compass in motion and swore silently, realizing her aura had been locked, no crevice left to vanish into. She cursed again, bitterness twisting through her. After rebirth, she had planned to claw her way back and reclaim everything, but she hadn't foreseen being cornered so soon. She burned with the question of whether this was how it would all end. Then Skeleton appeared. The cultivators jerked back in alarm. One demanded his name and warned him to move or risk dragging himself into a fight he couldn't survive, while Su Yunyun narrowed her eyes and demanded to know if this was truly him, the little one, who somehow turned up here. She hadn't imagined that, staring death in the face, the person standing between her and the end would be someone she despised. Meanwhile, Skeleton introduced himself as Scumbag Skull Great and mocked the trio as worthless nobodies daring to hunt without his permission. She stared, reeling from the realization that he was a man. But a man who didn't even know about the Immortal Supreme couldn't possibly face three full-fledged immortals, so she concluded that he was charging toward death. She snapped at him to leave now, or die where he stood, all while seething at the futility of courage without power, and the danger of dragging him in. Skeleton snapped at her to shut up and let fly a storm of insults. He ordered her back to the martial arts gym, claiming that if she had stayed there, the three fools wouldn't have laid a hand on her, but instead, she had bolted like a maniac straight out of the city. He laughed off the idea that someone like him would help her, insisting that if not for his master's orders, he couldn't care less whether she dropped dead. He complained that he had used the last of his resources to summon a young lady for a pleasant evening, only for her to ruin it and leave him raging enough to feel bone cancer coming on. A true pinnacle of cultivation backlash. She reeled, genuinely stunned. No one had ever dared shout at the Empress like this. And yet, this ridiculous, powerless idiot did. One of the cultivators growled that they would all die here, and she quickly warned Skeleton to be careful. But he simply flicked his finger. He reminded them he had already told them they were garbage and scoffed at their nerve for interrupting him. Su Yunyun weighed the scale of destruction unleashed by a single finger, the sort of flick Saitama might use to neutralize a planetary threat. She recoiled when the cultivators landed hard beside her. She wondered if three immortals had truly been erased in an instant. She reflected on who Skeleton really was and conceded without delusion that even at the height of her past life, she couldn't have touched that level of power, especially not while he remained fixated on his lost gold and the departed woman. One of the cultivators, facing Su Yunyun, acknowledged that he hadn't expected her to be sheltering someone that dangerous. Yet he warned her not to get cocky, pointing out that no matter how absurdly strong that little freak was, he wouldn't last against their Immortal Supreme Yizhen, and the entire mess had already been reported, which left her with zero odds of slipping away. Su Yunyun figured that if Chen Yizhen grasped even a fraction of what was happening, his retaliation would spiral out indefinitely, probably stacking more twists than an entire cultivation drama arc. Skeleton offhandedly observed that the man had survived a billionth of his power without disintegrating, so that was decent. But since the guy was annoying, he would now annihilate him and erase his ancestors across 8 generations. Elsewhere, in a remote mountain region, a colossal blast shattered the stillness. A local turned to his wife, asking what that noise was, and she responded that several ancient graves next door had burst open. Skull Great, apparently allergic to passive-aggressive shade, snapped his fingers and deleted the man along with every grave tied to his bloodline across 18 generations. He muttered that they were parts of a cursed cult, leeching strength from human sacrifice, so wiping them out counted more as a civic favor than a war crime. He grumbled that their interference had ruined his fun and flushed half a year's worth of gold into the void, far from the payoff he'd anticipated. Su Yunyun approached and addressed him respectfully, requesting that he stop. She voiced her thanks for saving her and acknowledged she had erred in offending him earlier. But considering what the cultivator had revealed, she feared Chen Yizhen's counterstrike was close and pleaded humbly for him to stay and protect her for 2 more days. He scoffed, asking whether she wasn't the one who kept insisting she didn't need help from a lowlife. She apologized, admitted her blindness, and begged him to let the past drop. He waved her off, remarking that the scumbag wasn't available, and told her to return to the martial arts gym and quit being a pain. Moments later, Su Yunyun stood once again inside the martial arts gym. She muttered that Skeleton had been right, she should have returned, but the idea that this place could hold back Chen Yizhen's elites was pure fantasy. She settled onto her bed. She murmured that only 1 day remained until her nirvana completed, so she silently hoped Chen Yizhen's forces would hold off a little longer. Above, the full moon cast its cold light across the landscape. Chen Yizhen's silhouette emerged against it, watching her. He greeted her, commented on the time that had passed, and inquired about her current state. Su Yunyun stepped out immediately. She asked if it truly was Chen Yizhen, and accused him of wanting her dead so badly that he came in person, which earned a laugh. He confirmed, without shame, that he had indeed come to kill her. She reminded him that she once trained him, nurtured his talents, but he had coveted her seat, waited until her 7 revolutions to nirvana, used the opening to trap her, nearly wiped her out, and now wanted to finish what he'd started. He responded coldly that he never left unfinished business, so she would die, and no one could stop it. A thunderous shockwave burst outward as he released his crushing aura. Su Yunyun accepted that this could be the end, but her entire being recoiled at the thought. Then, a locust tree branch surged upward, intercepting the blow like a divine cheat code embedded straight into the environment. It wrapped around his arms, locking them down. Recognizing the locust tree, panic took him, and he struggled, unable to break its grip. He cried out that his power was draining away. Su Yunyun flinched in horror as his scream collapsed into silence. His presence unraveled entirely before her. Within 2 breaths, he ceased to exist. Su Yunyun tried to piece together what had just happened. Even if it had only been an avatar, that projection carried the weight of a mysterious immortal. Now she understood why Skeleton had berated her. She really had been a fool, because if she'd just stayed at the gym, she would have been untouchable, and all her frantic fleeing had accomplished nothing. A light shimmered across her forehead. Her nirvana succeeded. She exhaled that it was a relief to have her cultivation restored. But the mystery lingered. Even with her powers returned, the locust tree's presence remained hidden, and she would have to search further to unravel its truth. She entered a sealed chamber. She questioned whether it was real, and marveled that beneath all that junk, she found holy grade, supreme grade, and even immortal weapons. She initially wondered if it had been the clothes hanger. Then she recognized a first-rate immortal weapon, and acknowledged that despite reigning as Immortal Supreme for years, she had only ever possessed 2 such weapons. In that moment, a garden tool caught her attention. She remarked there was another one. Then the kitchen knife, the rake head, the sickle. Within moments, she dropped to the floor. She murmured that she couldn't endure anymore, and lingering would definitely damage her cultivation. It turned out, the utility room was only the beginning, as every object, from calligraphy and sculpture to common items and decoration, from the dog food bowl to the firewood pile, radiated the unmistakable presence of a first-rate immortal weapon. She considered what kind of lunatic built a martial arts gym like this, casually flexing with a utility shed capable of leveling a celestial sect. Abruptly, she posed whether it was true the master of that gym had created it, and observed that the master held the title of Sect Master of the Heaven and Earth Sect. She pondered if he might actually be some peerless expert in hiding. With certainty, she concluded the man in white was a peerless expert. She remembered once wondering if he held any real power, and scoffed that the notion had made her laugh. That once she completed her nirvana cycle and drew her immortal sword, he would be the one cowering. She had grumbled that the place was pathetic, and questioned whether it was even secure. When she dismissed any need for protection, she reflected bitterly that she had truly been blind. By the next day, Su Yunyun headed into town. She noted that regaining composure had taken all night, so she deserved a quiet morning tea. The wife of the beef stall owner greeted her early and offered a bowl of noodle soup. Su Yunyun froze once she got a closer look. She identified that both the stall owner and his wife clearly transcended mortal status, at least at the heavenly immortal level. Right then, the stall owner addressed Zhuru wrong, instructing him to hold back half a caddy of pork belly and toss in some premium ribs. Zhuru wrong responded that it was no trouble. Su Yunyun's eyebrow twitched again the instant she saw him. She pegged him as another immortal, and even the butcher's knife he gripped carried the air of an immortal weapon. She glanced over at the old men playing chess beneath the tree, and at the two bickering women across the road. She determined every last one of them emitted pressure on par with immortals. Suddenly, a mouse crossed her line of sight. She registered that its aura matched her own. As the overwhelming presence of immortals pressed in, she admitted her mind had gone blank. Shortly after, she returned to the martial arts gym. She confirmed that the entire street was absolutely overrun with immortals and relayed her question on what kind of place this could be. She pointed out that this deceptively mundane town concealed far too many experts, and worse were the hidden existences with power rivaling her own past peak. She lamented that a trip for morning tea had spiraled into a spiritual breakdown, and when the knock came at the door, she demanded to know who it was. Feng identified himself. She checked whether it was really him. He instructed her to open up. He darted through the doorway the moment it opened. He inquired how well she had rested, and she responded that she was fine, offering many thanks to the senior. Shame burned through her, realizing that her arrogance as an Immortal Supreme had kept her from recognizing even a first-rate immortal weapon. But she corrected her own assessment, judging it might not even be an immortal weapon at all, but something far beyond, and that even at her pinnacle, she had never earned the right to boast before him. He observed that since she was rested, it was time to get to business, and she told him to go ahead. He declared that she should join the Heaven and Earth Sect and become his disciple at the same time. She repeated the part about becoming his disciple. Panic surged through him as he prepared for rejection, cursed the poor timing, and resolved that even if he had to trick her, he would make her stay. So he warned her that refusing would be a mistake, because he could make her a heaven-chosen one and reshape her into a fairy-like figure. She speculated if that meant she could ascend directly to the god realm. She immediately performed the disciple's salute. He approved and remarked that it was acceptable. Suddenly, Feng received a system notification. It congratulated him for successfully recruiting a disciple, pushing progress to 5 out of 100, and rewarded him for inducting the first disciple since the founding of the sect. He promptly announced he was going to the toilet, and Su Yunyun reminded him to be cautious since the floor was slippery. Feng ordered the system to display the reward, and as he braced himself, he confessed the thrill of anticipation alone had his blood surging. The system rewarded him with several books, and also an outrageous number of CDs. He stared at the loot and cursed, swearing to tear apart the worthless system for not including a single cultivation method or martial manual. But then he recalled the system had displayed 5 people for task progress earlier. He double-checked that it really was 5, but only if Chi Yi Tong was included. So he investigated whether Chi Yi Tong had been counted or if something had gone wrong. Feng considered the possibility that something might have happened to Chi Yi Tong, and he concluded he would come back later to confirm. Suddenly, Qing Huanxiang addressed him and remarked that the boat bound for the island had arrived. Feng replied that he should escort Su Yunyun back to the Heaven and Earth Sect first, and he agreed. She inquired whether he intended to send her alone and if he was not returning. Feng recalled that it had been quite a while since he had shared a meal with Zhuru Rong and the others, so he responded that he planned to remain in the martial arts gym for 2 days and they should go back ahead. Su Yunyun reasoned that if she had to leave the martial arts gym without him there, she would be vulnerable if Chen Yizhen truly appeared to kill her, especially since she remained deeply uneasy around strangers. He assured her not to worry because the Heaven and Earth Sect had Qing Huanxiang, along with several of her senior brothers and sisters, and they were all reliable, so she agreed it was acceptable. Moments later, Su Yunyun departed for the island with Qing Huanxiang. She asked whether that was the island. She noticed that Qing Huanshang appeared formidable too, but the enemy was an Immortal Supreme, so she doubted how he could compare with Yi Feng and the martial arts gym he had established. Moments later, they docked. Qing Huanshang remarked that she could now disembark. She stepped off the boat and onto the island. She sensed its oppressive force. She acknowledged that it was a realm of immense pressure, and even if she restored the cultivation base of an Immortal Supreme capable of rending apart this Xianzhang continent with a single gesture, under that weight, she could not even leap properly, let alone fly, because it simply existed a level above the immortal world. She decided she had to go in and explore regardless. She encountered a resident and found herself stunned. She realized that even there, an immortal had taken residence. The immortal streets there clearly stood more than a tier above those of Jiangping City. What she previously believed now seemed absurd. Her inner fears were completely groundless, because she had merely transitioned from one secure place to another, even more secure one. She berated herself for having doubted her master's arrangement when it was so obvious that he had meticulously planned everything on her behalf. In the past, she had been so narrow-minded, clinging to the status of a 9 revolutions god king and overestimating her identity as a mere Immortal Supreme in her former life. There, Immortal Supremes amounted to nothing, and as she pondered who Chen Yizhen even was, she realized her state of mind had shifted. By joining the Heaven and Earth Sect, she would ascend toward a new pinnacle, one of genuine awakening. That was how the day passed. Meanwhile, Yi Feng judged that the pathetic drama had gone entirely overboard. Because of the flyers previously distributed by the system, a few more people came over to worship him. He simply had not anticipated that when he dispatched them to sort the books and jade slips gifted by the system into the library, those punks ended up binging novels and manhwa in there and even skipped meals. Also, after he returned, he redetected Qi Yitong, and somehow he genuinely acquired standard qualification, so the mistake of accidentally accepting a disciple seemed like a stroke of luck after all. Suddenly, Su Yunyun presented him with his tea, and he replied that it was good. She reflected that indeed, whenever she was with him, her realm advanced at an accelerated rate. Zhongqing abruptly called out to Yi Feng. Su Yunyun immediately addressed him as her big senior, and while acknowledging Yi Feng, he remarked that 5th junior sister was also present. He reported that earlier, a group of fools had shown up outside and tried to harm old man Jang, not to mention that one even declared intent to kill Su Yunyun. So he eliminated him in a single knife strike. Yi Feng inquired whether the person truly intended to kill Su Yunyun, and instructed that he be brought in to take a look. Moments later, Su Yunyun carried in Chen Yizhen's corpse. Su Yunyun stood frozen in horror. Yi Feng noted that he died with one blow, and questioned whether he expected to charge in to kill his disciple with such clumsy execution, while Su Yunyun recognized that it truly was Chen Yizhen. It was his actual body, and the Grand Immortal Supreme had truly been slain by Zhongqing, and judging by the wound, it had indeed been done with just a knife. Even though she called him Big Senior because of his naive, guileless, and sincere demeanor, she had never been able to perceive what he was capable of, and she wondered whether someone like Chen Yizhen could actually be felled with a single blade. She reminded herself to calm down and simply observe the elderly men and women outside. They were all unfathomably strong, not to mention that he was a big senior, so there was no way any disciple of Yi Feng could be ordinary. On the other hand, Yi Feng ordered that they throw the body into the lake as fish food, and Zhongqing agreed. Su Yunyun acknowledged that Chen Yizhen was at least an Immortal Supreme, and if such an incident reached the outside world, she could not predict the scale of upheaval it might cause. But her master and Big Senior treated it as if it were completely inconsequential. She reevaluated what a god truly was, and concluded that only a man like her master, who could do anything, could be considered one. That feeling of being protected and unshakably supported. She massaged Yi Feng's legs and he appeared satisfied. Su Yunyun recalled that in her previous life as an Immortal Supreme, she had always carried others on her back, so the sensation caught her by surprise. Out of the blue, a disciple in the library remarked on how amazing it felt. The book, One Punch Man, blew him away, and he claimed it even cost him his hair. He mused why anyone would bother with a sword when one punch could wrap things up. Nearby, another disciple dug into a book on poultry farming. The egg in front of him cracked open. A divine phoenix bloodline surfaced from the shell. He sprang to his feet, announced its arrival, and declared that as a descendant of the royal beast lineage's 18th generation, he would not only honor his ancestors, but also eclipse them. His laugh echoed across the island and reached another disciple immersed in a different book. That disciple toyed with a sheathed sword while reading. An elder disciple silently closed the gap behind him. He wondered what his junior brother might be working on. His junior brother struck without warning, prompting a quick block. He registered that his body had instinctively intercepted the blow, and what had just triggered was a honed ability that directly scrambled an opponent's intent. His junior brother had nailed down such an eerie technique. In a flash, over 6 months drifted past. By then, the Heaven and Earth Sect had a few disciples milling around. Feng, meanwhile, remained sprawled across his courtyard. He noted that the system's flyer campaign had roped in 29 disciples already. Still, none of them appeared especially drawn to cultivation, which didn't faze him much, considering he had no techniques to hand out anyway. Suddenly, Xiaozhan greeted him, then pressed again for his rank and name like it was the first time. Xiaozhan introduced himself as ranked 28th and gave his name without hesitation. He explained he was a disciple with urgent business at home and hoped for his approval to leave, but Feng raised an eyebrow at the rush and demanded the reason. Xiaozhan explained there was a marriage agreement in his family. Yet when the bride's side realized his family lacked wealth and his talent didn't measure up, they stormed over and forced a withdrawal. Feng frowned at the situation, questioning whether this counted as a withdrawal and if the other side really thought so little of his disciples. He turned to Su Yunyun and told her they would accompany Xiaozhan personally, ordering her to keep things under control, and she gave a nod. She remarked that anyone bold enough to push around their junior brother clearly didn't value their lives, so they were going. Xiaozhan, despite having no cultivation base to speak of, took comfort in the company forming behind him. But Su Yunyun halted them with a raised hand and instructed Xiaozhan to return first, which prompted him to press her for a reason. She informed him they would depart after the arrival of the 18th junior sister Hong Fengguang. One disciple muttered that her presence might be unnecessary since she was terrifying in combat, ruthless enough to thrash her own allies, and wild enough to self-destruct on a whim. Su Yunyun acknowledged his point, but Hong Fengguang suddenly cut in, claiming she'd caught wind of another fight. She casually mused about the number of enemies this time. She grinned and described how the moment she detonated herself in their midst, the sight would steal the breath from anyone watching. Everyone stiffened into silence while her laughter echoed through the space. Elsewhere, Louu existed within the Void Realm. That was inside the Heavenly Dome Empire, deep in the heart of Heavenly Star City. She was having a meal at Boyi Restaurant. There were plenty of guests packed inside. The patriarch of the Chen family mentioned that on behalf of his whole clan, he wanted a toaster, and another patriarch jumped in with the same idea. But she, the saintess of the Heavenly Spirit Sect, didn't even glance at them, and the lack of interest on her face couldn't be more obvious. Meanwhile, Zhao Yun, the Zhao family patriarch, kept watching her closely. He figured no one could have predicted things would spin out like this. For centuries, the Liu family had thrived under the Xiao family's backing, and 2 decades back, to show gratitude, the Liu family had deliberately arranged for Liu Ruyan to marry his son, Zhao Zhan. But once Liu Ruyan got picked out as a first-rate talent by the Heavenly Spirit Sect, she advanced straight to the human immortal realm, and from that moment, the entire dynamic between the families flipped. Sure, in the Void Realm, a human immortal didn't hold much sway, but she was only 20, an immortal at 20, with limitless potential ahead of her. Not to mention, the Heavenly Spirit Sect ruled the whole southern region, and even maintained solid ties with the Empire's headquarters, so the status gap between the Liu family and his Zhao family had grown massive. Without warning, Liu Ruyan asked how things were progressing, specifically about the annulment. One patriarch brought up whether the Liu family planned to end the engagement. Another commented that it wasn't surprising. Another pointed out the pale face of the Xiao patriarch, and yet another added that getting rejected in a marriage arrangement was the biggest humiliation in the Void Realm. Zhao Yun replied that it had already played out. She had invited all the other major families in Heavenly Star City purely to stage that scene. He had already said it was fine to dissolve the arrangement, but she had to hear it directly from his son. Instead, she brought in other families to corner them on purpose. She didn't even bother leaving Xiaozhan a shred of dignity. Then, without any warning, a man blurted that the old guy was being an idiot and totally out of line. He toppled over and hit the ground. The man claimed he once believed the Xiao family's ties with the Louu family ran deep enough that no one would dare provoke them, but now it looked like they had simply been discarded, and if he refused to accept the Louu family's decision to break off the engagement, then he shouldn't expect their courtesy to last. Zhao Yun remarked that Liu Ruyan wasn't the same person anymore. He no longer intended to reach for something that far above him. Still, his son had faced a rough path, once gifted nearly to her level. But fate hadn't played fair, stripping away his cultivation after a streak of misfortune. Now forced to endure a broken engagement and grasping for a way through it, he muttered that Liu Ruyan really didn't hold back. The man tossed in his contempt, declaring the old bastard was digging his own grave. Right then, Xiao Zhan came rushing toward them. He pleaded that they spare his father. One of the patriarchs scoffed that the trash had returned, and the man laughed along, calling him exactly that. Xiao Zhan and Xiao Yun froze when Liu Ruyan rose from her seat. She announced that since Xiao Zhan had shown up, he ought to choose now, a suggestion that drew nods from the other patriarchs. Xiao Zhan explained that though they'd been betrothed since childhood, they'd only met once, and no matter how far she'd risen, he never aimed to latch on to her status. So if she wished to dissolve the marriage, he wouldn't stop her. Still, he challenged her over why she'd gathered so many people that day, questioning whether it had been a calculated move to disgrace the Xiao family and his father. She dismissed the idea, claiming she only brought them as witnesses, since they came from the top clans in Heaven Star City. He pressed again, asking what exactly they were meant to witness, his family's broken alliance or his father's public shame. He reminded her that even in the Liu family's worst times, the Xiao family always stood behind them, and as he demanded whether this was how she repaid that loyalty, she repeated that he had misunderstood. The patriarchs leaned forward with interest the moment Liu Ruyan revealed the treasures. She mentioned that as long as Xiao Zhan agreed to end the engagement, he could walk away with everything. One of the patriarchs identified the item as an intermediate elixir, while another brought up the immortal weapon Jiaguang sword. And naturally, everyone recognized that coming from the Heavenly Spirit Sect, this was no small offer. Another patriarch warned Xiao Zhan not to get carried away since Liu Ruyan had already compensated him. And when he asked what more Xiao Zhan wanted, one of the others echoed him. Xiao Zhan found the suggestion reasonable and dismissed Liu Ruyan as a witch chasing attention. He declared that he would not end the engagement. Liu Ruyan and the other patriarchs froze. One of the men mocked him for flaunting pride with nothing to back it, calling it a death wish. Xiao Zhan silently apologized to his father, believing this was the only move left, and if it led to death, he had no one to blame but himself for lacking strength. But Liu Ruyan abruptly interrupted, telling the man to stop. Attacking someone without cultivation would only stain his name. Xiao Zhan needed to recognize that their world honored strength, and most things were already unfair by nature. Still, with the ties between their families, she didn't want to escalate needlessly, so she offered him a chance to fight back. She gave him 3 years and announced she would wait at the Heavenly Spirit Sect, promising that if he beat her, she wouldn't just stay in the engagement, she'd serve as his maidservant and submit to his will. If his Zhao family chose to back out instead, she wouldn't complain. However, if he remained beneath her after those 3 years, she would publicly end the engagement herself. Su Yunyun suddenly jumped in, snapping at her and questioning where she found the nerve to act so full of herself. Xiao Zhan stiffened at the sight of her. Su Yunyun declared that if it meant making Liu Ruyan kneel to his junior and become his servant, then 3 days would be more than enough. One of the patriarchs demanded to know who had the guts to cause a scene. One of them turned on a lunatic like Su Yunyun for overstepping with Liu Ruyan, another warned her to scram if she valued her life, and a third pushed for throwing them all out. Liu Ruyan, meanwhile, kept thinking that Su Yunyun carried a presence too intense to ignore, one that genuinely rattled her, and whoever stood behind her clearly wasn't some random crew. The man with the long sword moved like someone born for justice, practically glowing with a righteous edge, and that bandaged woman, the way she swept her gaze around, clearly broadcasted danger. She demanded to know who they were. Su Yunyun introduced them as Xiao Zhan's senior brothers and sisters. One of the patriarchs scoffed that Xiao Zhan had always been worthless and claimed no sect had ever accepted him, which another echoed, then questioned where this bunch of senior siblings had suddenly popped up from. Liu Ruyan called that nonsense, and as she threw a jab at Su Yunyun about thinking too highly of herself, she kept mulling over how, even though they'd only crossed paths once, she understood him too clearly to doubt a sect that welcomed him. Those people felt out of the ordinary, yet not overwhelmingly powerful either. She brushed off their madness as a favor to the Xiao family, then pressed Su Yunyun on whether she meant it about the 3 days. Su Yunyun confirmed without hesitation. The room stirred with scattered mutters. At the same time, Zhao Yun pointed out that the flyer carried traces of the great Tao and questioned Xiao Zhan about joining the sect it mentioned, who confirmed and shared that he just had a strong hunch they weren't ordinary. Liu Ruyan declared that if no one objected, she'd assume everyone agreed, and no one better claim later that the Xiao family hadn't been given a shot. Zhao Zhan admitted they truly were his senior brothers and sisters, and he trusted them, grateful for their help if it came, but made it clear that even if nothing changed, whether it was 3 days or 3 years, the outcome wouldn't matter. One patriarch pressed him on whether he'd actually face Liu Ruyan in 3 days, another called him an idiot, and yet another jeered that maybe he planned to throw in the towel. Xiao Zhan remembered how, despite joining the Heaven and Earth sect not long ago, everything shifted from the moment he picked up that flyer and walked in. The Heaven and Earth sect marked the turning point in his life. Nobody mocked him for being weak there, and for once, he felt safe. He also picked up on the fact that those senior brothers and sisters weren't average cultivators, so with them backing him, even if he lost, he wouldn't carry regret. Hong Fengquang noted that the kid sure had guts. Liu Ruyan approved and asked everyone present to witness the 3-day agreement. One patriarch reassured her that no one would forget, and another said she'd done more than enough. She thanked the room and told them to wait and see. News traveled fast across the southern region. A spectacle like that practically begged for an audience, so swarms of spectators headed straight for the Heavenly Spirit sect. Meanwhile, Hong Fengquang grilled Su Yunyun on why she even wasted words on that garbage, and suggested she should have just wiped the floor with them. Su Yunyun reminded him that this was Xiao Zhan's personal business, and if he didn't handle it himself, he'd carry that weight forever, which could screw with his cultivation. Hong Fengquang raised an eyebrow and asked if that meant no fighting at all. Another disciple chimed in that it hinged on whether Liu Ruyan would really keep her word and become Xiao Zhan's maidservant in 3 days, and if not, she could always wreck the Heaven Spirit sect instead. Hong Fengquang then questioned why Su Yunyun asked for 3 whole days and whether 3/4 of an hour wouldn't have done the job. But Su Yunyun explained that those days were reserved for Bai Qiyu. Since going bald, he hadn't managed to fly, and at his pace, 3 days sounded about right. Meanwhile, Zhao Yun kept turning it over in his mind, and the more it went on, the more it stank of nonsense, which made him suspect they were trying to mess with his kid. He turned to Xiao Zhan and wanted to know if he really would be fine, even with the older disciples around. Xiao Zhan figured he trusted the senior brothers and sisters, but beating Liu Ruyan in 3 days still felt way out of reach. He calmly turned to Su Yunyun, curious if she genuinely had a method for taking down Liu Ruyan in 3 days, and she confirmed it, crediting Yi Feng for having everything planned out. Yi Feng had passed along the message for him to read that book and immerse himself in its protagonist, and he checked if it was the one Yi Feng had given him. She told him it would all make sense once he opened it, and he nodded in acceptance. Xiao Yun stood there with a weight in his chest, seeing how pitiful his kid looked and hoping he wouldn't completely break in 3 days. Suddenly, Xiao Zhan came out with the line about 30 years east and 30 years west, and how nobody should look down on him just because he had nothing. Not anymore. A bright flash tore across the sky with a loud roar that shook the ground. Xiao Zhan's aura erupted and threw the furniture all over the place. Su Yunyun figured it needed some managing, or the place might not survive, so she threw up a barrier that locked the energy in. He mentioned that everything in the book had clicked, and now he understood how to shape his own fate. Zhao Yun started to wonder if he had jumped straight into immortal territory, maybe even golden immortal without warning. One disciple mentioned that Xiao Zhan had only reached the golden immortal stage because he hadn't trained long enough, which was unfortunate, and Zhao Yun couldn't wrap his head around how they were brushing off a golden immortal like it was average. Xiao Zhan bowed respectfully to his senior brothers and sister, but Su Yunyun told him it wasn't needed, not since they were all part of the same Heaven and Earth sect family. Besides, it all came down to their master's arrangements. Xiao Zhan recognized that it had always been their master's doing. The master had foreseen he'd mirror the fate of the main character from Battle Through the Heavens and had given him that book as a guide, something like a leftover blessing from a past life. He made a silent vow to serve the Heaven and Earth sect loyally and never waver in his devotion to the master. Meanwhile, Zhao Yun felt like they were truly under their ancestors' protection. Still, the master they kept mentioning had pushed Xiao Zhan to Golden Immortal using just a book, which felt terrifying. And no wonder those people ignored the heavenly spirit sect and acted like they could crush it whenever they wanted. He had assumed they were bluffing earlier and now realized how blind he'd been. He turned to Xiaozhan and said that in 3 days, he'd stand beside him at the heavenly spirit sect, letting them and the Louu family witness firsthand how little their 20-year-old human immortal counted for. When Xiaozhan agreed, he declared that his son was the true heaven-chosen one. He couldn't wait to see the look on that woman's face when she realized the man she dumped had become a 20-year-old golden immortal. He let himself imagine what sort of expression she'd pull. 3 days flew by in an instant. News of the fight between Xiaozhan and Liu Ruyan, the saintess of the heavenly spirit sect, had already spread like wildfire across the southern region, and people kept pouring into the sect without pause. Most showed up to watch Xiaozhan fall flat on his face, but they also wanted a glimpse of Liu Ruyan's grace. Elsewhere, Yin Tianxiong leaned toward Liu Ruyan and asked her how things were looking, curious if she felt confident going into the fight. He was her master and also the sect master of the heavenly spirit sect. She brushed it off as a fight with no uncertainty, and when he pushed further, she questioned what there was to worry about, and he backed off, realizing it had been a pointless question. He wanted to know if she harbored any resentment over the situation that had turned the Louu and Zhao families into bitter enemies. She told him not to joke like that, since even if she had no ties to the Xiao family, she and Xiaozhan had never been on the same path anyway, and he took that as good news. Glad she wasn't bitter. He reminded her that the third prince had been fuming over the marriage deal she had been tied to, and only by taking a hard enough stance would the prince feel reassured. That's why he had been working quietly behind the scenes, even going as far as opening the sect gates wide to welcome more spectators. And she responded with a note of gratitude. He noted how cool-headed she always was. Still, the effort seemed worth it, because even the heavenly spirit sect had to acknowledge the empire above it, and if a disciple married into the royal family, the sect's position would finally be secure. She assured him that she wouldn't forget everything the sect had done, and he told her he felt genuinely moved. Even so, he asked for her assurance that she wouldn't hesitate during the fight, and if she beat Xiaozhan to death, it wouldn't be a big deal. If she showed mercy and caused the third prince to feel slighted, things could spiral, and she calmly told him to relax, as she knew exactly how far to go. Xiaozhan and the other disciples moved in the direction of the heavenly spirit sect. Without warning, he halted and turned to the senior sisters and brothers walking behind. He brought up the duel, explaining that it didn't hold any weight for him anymore and skipping it wouldn't make a difference to him. Ever since stepping into the realm of immortals, his whole outlook flipped, and now, proving anything in front of Liu Ruyan felt pointless to him. But Hong Fengquang pushed back, tossing out a sharp line about how skipping the fight would make her trip worthless, since she still had plans to crush the heavenly spirit sect. Zhao Yun chimed in with his own reasons, adding that he had been relying on him and couldn't wait to witness the reaction on the other side. Su Yunyun followed with a cooler take, saying she saw where Xiaozhan was coming from, but avoiding the fight wouldn't shift anything and didn't match how their heaven and earth sect operated. He acknowledged it. In the arena, the crowd had already packed in. They filled the place with chants for Liu Ruyan. Not long after, she made her entrance. People in the stands called out how stunning she looked, how a saintess should look just like that, and how unfair it was that someone could be that young, that strong, and that beautiful. They took turns mocking the Xiao family reject, throwing around insults about him having the nerve to show up and acting clueless about the scope of the world. One of them threw in a jab about the trash having the guts to appear at all, and another followed up, half impressed that he actually seemed a little tougher than expected. Liu Ruyan picked up on a shift in his aura compared to 3 days earlier, and while the change made her pause for a moment, she brushed it off, convinced it made no difference since garbage stayed garbage. She stated that no matter how strong he was, given the old ties between the Zhao and Louu families, she would treat the fight with full seriousness, hold nothing back, and that alone would count as respect. Someone in the audience remarked that she truly lived up to the title of saintess, and another chimed in, noting how she clearly had the power to slap that trash into the dirt, yet still made that statement. One of Yifeng's disciples pointed out that everyone was underestimating Xiaozhan, which earned a nod from Hong Fengquang, who added that they should skip the chatter and just get on with the fight. Liu Ruyan let her aura loose without warning. Someone in the crowd declared she was an earth immortal, and another confirmed it, calling her the undisputed genius of the southern region. Someone else noted that being a 20-year-old Earth immortal placed her far above just Southern fame, possibly among the very top in the entire empire. Yin Tianxiang understood that breaking the engagement was only part of the strategy. The real objective was to use it to launch Liu Ruyan into the spotlight, and with someone like her on the stage, the Heavenly Spirit Sect would gain serious political weight across the empire. Anyone could see that a 20-year-old Earth immortal would become a terrifying presence in 100 years, and the future would offer her a far broader platform to rise. Before all that, she needed to trample the person standing in her way. On the other end, Liu Ruyan questioned it. She questioned Xiao Zhan's calm demeanor, whether he lacked despair entirely or had simply resigned himself and abandoned the will to resist. She announced that he could make the first move, offering him the chance outright, but he declined and told her to go ahead instead. She didn't expect that. He explained that his master had taught him to let ladies go first. A voice from the crowd found him hilarious, another dismissed it as pointless bluffing given the chance he'd just passed up, and another predicted that if he handed the initiative to Liu Ruyan, the fight would end before it even began. Meanwhile, one of the disciples mentioned how Xiao Zhan sure had a talent for looking like he got strong-armed. Back at the fight, Liu Ruyan let out a scoff. She broke into hysterics. She remarked on how unexpectedly adorable Xiao Zhan turned out to be, and what a shame it was that they'd have to part ways that day. But he didn't even flinch from her strike, and his eyes stayed shut the whole time. He caught her blade between his fingers like it meant nothing. She blinked in disbelief, realizing he only used two. On the other side, Yin Tianxiang froze in pure shock, blurting out curses, while someone in the crowd wondered what kind of stunt this was and if Xiao Zhan wasn't supposed to be useless with zero cultivation. He questioned how someone like that could stop Liu Ruyan's sword so casually. Back in the ring, Xiao Zhan declared it was his turn. He shattered her sword and hurled her across the arena with one sweep of his arm. She smacked into the ground with a hard thud. The crowd gasped that it only took a single blow. Yin Tianxiang wondered aloud if that counted as a one-shot. They couldn't wrap their heads around it. Meanwhile, Liu Ruyan demanded how trash like him could take her down, and insisted it wasn't possible. She activated her Heavenly Spirit Sword. She pointed out that while everyone assumed he was worthless, he turned out tougher than expected. But even so, under the force of that technique, unless he had the strength of a heavenly immortal, he'd be done for. Xiao Zhan questioned whether he was destined to die. He replied that she might not get her wish after all. Her face went pale when the attack she summoned crumbled to dust. Su Yunyun and Hong Fengquang looked satisfied. Meanwhile, the crowd just stood there, stunned. Yin Tianxiang announced that Xiao Zhan was beyond a heavenly immortal. He was a golden immortal. The audience buzzed, wondering if Xiao Zhan really had reached golden immortal status. One of them blurted out whether he wasn't trash and how he suddenly ended up so strong, while another chimed in, recalling that he looked about the same age as Liu Ruyan, a 20-year-old golden immortal, and figured he was even more of a monster than her. On the other hand, Liu Ruyan dismissed it completely, tossing out a demand to know how he could possibly have the strength of a golden immortal. But right after, she coughed up blood. Xiao Zhan remarked that she had lost. That day, he made it official. He was cutting off the marriage agreement with her, Liu Ruyan, and they were done for good. The divorce papers smacked her face while she was still unconscious. Yin Tianxiang refused. He struck Xiao Zhan from behind. Xiao Zhan failed to avoid it, and blood burst from his mouth as the blow landed. Yin Tianxiang snapped that everything had been ruined, so he had to die. Out of nowhere, Su Yunyun kicked him straight in the face. She launched him with such force that he went flying. He groaned about how strong it was and asked who did that. She named herself Su Yunyun of the Heaven and Earth Sect, and added that she was also Xiao Zhan's senior sister. Yin Tianxiang frowned and muttered about the Heaven and Earth Sect, figuring he had never heard of it. Su Yunyun scoffed that she hadn't expected a proper sect master to go for a sneak attack, called it a disgrace, and added that if her junior brother had ended up seriously hurt, the entire Heavenly Spirit Sect wouldn't be enough to bury alongside him. Yin Tianxiang eyed her warily, wondering where this Heaven and Earth Sect came from, and grumbled that she was far too arrogant. He sneered that Xiao Zhan had ignored the rules and launched a sneak attack on his disciple in the ring, while that disciple was too naive to catch the setup, nearly having her reputation wrecked by a divorce letter. He stewed over the idea that if Xiao Zhan managed to walk away from the engagement just like that, The third prince would look like a rag picker, so they couldn't let that pass. He claimed that everyone present must have seen what really happened, and since he was an ally of the Heavenly Spirit Sect, he'd be the one to bear witness, with no choice but to act for justice. The crowd faltered in silence and doubt, but one person spoke up, claiming they saw Xiao Zhan throw the first blow. Another backed it, insisting that Yin Tianxiong couldn't possibly lie. Xiao Zhan moved to face him, but Su Yunyun suddenly laughed and remarked that the whole spectacle was quite the show, genuinely entertaining. She turned to Xiao Zhan. She told him to rest up and let the senior disciples handle the rest. Yin Tianxiong figured Su Yunyun was just some enigmatic immortal, wondering if she still had enough bite to stir things up in the main grounds of his Heavenly Spirit Sect. Pretty cocky assumption, all things considered. He challenged whether she could even handle the rest, and she brushed him off, tossing the suggestion back in his face like it was nothing. Turning toward Hong Fengquang, she remarked that the day ought to be fun for her. Hong Fengquang let out a wild laugh, saying she couldn't wait for Su Yunyun to finish talking, so she had already snatched them up and ended them herself. Spectators shouted that the heads of the two victims had burst open. Hong Fengquang cackled uncontrollably, muttering yes over and over like she'd finally snapped all the way. She promised to wipe them all out, while Yin Tianxiong fumed internally, struggling to grasp what she thought of the people under his sect's banner. He turned to the law enforcement hall and demanded their attention, getting a unified confirmation. He commanded them to surround and execute Hong Fengquang, and they acknowledged the order. Someone in the crowd pointed out that even the weakest in the law enforcement hall were heavenly immortal level, while another marveled at the sect's terrifying legacy, and a third flatly declared that the lunatic had signed her own death slip. Hong Fengquang beamed, noting how many people had gathered, and claimed it was just too much for her to keep herself contained anymore. A few gasps in the crowd followed, murmuring that the lunatic had chosen to charge forward rather than retreat. She declared that art, of course, was an explosion. The law enforcement hall instantly tensed up. Hong Fengquang detonated a massive blast right in the arena's heart. Not a single member of the law enforcement hall survived, and the arena collapsed into ruin. Voices screamed that they needed to run, that she was clearly deranged, and one noted she had actually self-destructed. Meanwhile, Xiao Zhan commented that Hong Fengquang had gone all in and chose death. Yin Tianxiong, on the other hand, reeled at the idea that the law enforcement hall he had painstakingly built, his sect's foundation, was erased in mere seconds. He erupted, proclaiming that every last one of them had to die, that whatever power backed the Heaven and Earth sect meant nothing, and none of them would walk out of his sect alive. He summoned the elders of the Heavenly Spirit sect, ordering them to obey his word. They agreed in unison, and he ordered them to eliminate anyone remotely connected to Su Yunyun or Xiao Zhan on the spot. Murmurs spread across the audience again. Someone praised the sect's depth, another shivered at the overwhelming formation, and a third admitted they never imagined so many elders would appear, noting that the leader had to be at the mysterious immortal realm. Su Yunyun, meanwhile, muttered that Hong Fengquang had blown herself up too early, leaving her surrounded by too many foes, which made things really inconvenient. Xiao Zhan offered to join the battle without fear, urging her to just tell him what needed doing. But she waved him off, telling him not to get ahead of himself, because things hadn't escalated quite that far. She simply reminded him to bring a bag and scoop up Hong Fengquang's bones later, hinting that in a couple days there might be something left to patch together. When he blinked at her, asking if she meant Hong Fengquang wasn't actually gone, she replied that this was just how she operated, and it was only a matter of time before the pieces came back together. He should just go and leave the rest to her. Elsewhere, Xiao Yun tried to wrap his head around what kind of monsters these people were, one blowing themselves up and surviving, the other standing alone against the top sect in the southern region, reckless beyond belief. Meanwhile, Su Yunyun turned to Li Jin and asked if he was really sure he didn't want to lend a hand, and he replied that it would be too dull. Better to help Xiao Zhan collect the body in case something important got left behind. She nodded and said fine. It had been a while since she last killed anyone. Yin Tianxiong sneered, grumbling that she had no clue about the vastness of the world she dared to challenge. The elders insisted on ending her life. Their attacks smashed the arena floor, triggering a thunderous boom and blasting shards of stone everywhere, chaos style. Yin Tianxiong let out a pained groan as he shielded himself and skidded across the floor, the sheer pressure hurling him backward, whether he liked it or not. He puzzled over what sort of freakish technique had just hit them. Su Yunyun zipped through their formation and casually dismantled the elders one after another, all while weaving through their strikes without breaking a sweat. Yin Tianxiang reeled at how someone up against a mob of mysterious immortals could still handle the pressure like it was a morning jog. He demanded to know who she really was and where this so-called heaven and earth sect had even come from. Su Yunyun, an Immortal Supreme, battle-hardened by millennia of fights in a previous life, dismissed him entirely, mentally ranking them all as trash and deciding he didn't even deserve an answer. Yin Tianxiang's face darkened, rage boiling just beneath the surface. He turned to his junior brother and declared that the heavenly spirit was under threat, so now would be a great time for him to step in and sort it out. Yin Jian's eyes opened without warning. A brilliant beam of light descended from above, casting its glow over the entire sect like some divine stage light. He then soared toward the arena at a breakneck pace. He radiated pure self-assurance, looked down on Su Yunyun with thinly veiled contempt, and that smugness made Yin Tianxiang visibly satisfied. Meanwhile, in the stands, someone blurted out that it was really Yin Jian and questioned whether he had been secretly hiding in the heavenly spirit sect the whole time, while another recognized him as the top genius of Yin Tianxiang's generation, and a third confirmed that he had forfeited the sect master role by choice, which made him nothing short of legendary. Yin Tianxiang pointed out that Su Yunyun had harmed his disciples and threatened the very foundation of the heavenly spirit sect, which meant calling in Yin Jian to eliminate the so-called demoness wasn't just justified, it was mandatory. Su Yunyun could feel his power and concluded it might finally be time to stop holding back. Yin Jian activated his signature move, Human Sword Unity. She acknowledged the technique as impressive. But then, someone in the crowd shouted for everyone to look at Bai Qiu and asked who the hell he even was, while another noticed he was sprinting somewhere and questioned whether he had a death wish. Yin Jian, sizing him up, clocked the bald head and fish eyes and immediately assumed he must be the opponent. He registered the strong aura and announced that if the guy was charging in, they'd treat him like any real challenger and go full force. Then confusion hit when Bai Qiu simply sprinted past him without so much as a glance. He mentally fumed at the sheer audacity of being ignored so blatantly. Su Yunyun, on the other hand, seemed almost relieved that Bai Qiu had finally shown up. Someone else boiled with rage at being overlooked, but Bai Qiu casually explained he had no time for nonsense and needed to relieve himself after 3 long days of holding it in. She visibly recoiled as he darted off toward the restroom. Yin Jian decided to let Yin Tianxiang deal with Su Yunyun and announced he'd take on the bald weirdo instead, to which Yin Tianxiang agreed without hesitation. Meanwhile, Bai Qiu released a deep sigh of contentment, savoring his newfound comfort. That comfort vanished instantly when the restroom exploded around him. Yin Jian had cut it apart with a single sword strike. He closed the distance toward Bai Qiu with purpose. He told him to get out, because no way was he dumb enough to believe that blast actually finished anything. Bai Qiu replied from inside that he wasn't done yet and cheekily asked if Yin Jian needed the toilet too. Then he clarified that, unfortunately, constipation was slowing progress. Yin Jian slashed toward him, but Bai Qiu sidestepped without even looking up. Another strike came, and he evaded again, still calmly flipping through his book. Yin Jian ramped up the speed and launched a flurry of slashes, but every single one missed, as if choreographed. Eventually, Bai Qiu closed his book. He asked what Yin Jian even wanted from him. Yin Jian admitted he was powerful and told him to stop dodging and start fighting, and Bai Qiu replied that he could have just started with that. Bai Qiu launched his fist at Yin Jian. Yin Jian got caught off guard, blood spilling from his mouth. He hurtled backward through the air. Yin Tianxiang nearly popped his eyes out of their sockets. Bai Qiu, meanwhile, hurled curses non-stop. The audience tossed around the question of whether Yin Jian, the so-called genius, had just been killed with a single punch. He'd been split clean in half, which meant the bald guy really took down the strongest sword cultivator around. Bai Qiu, on the other hand, figured the problem was just constipation, which made everything feel off. Yin Tianxiang tried to convince himself those freaks were just ridiculously strong. Liu Ruyan puzzled over what kind of chaos Xiao Zhan had waded through to end up with senior brothers and sisters like these. A lunatic woman blew herself up and took the entire law enforcement hall with her. A dead fish-eyed baldy punched an uncle to death, one wiped out every elder, and another calmly puppeteered the whole scene from behind. She couldn't fathom where such monsters had even come from. Then Ning Tianling dropped the bomb, claiming he'd only been asleep for 10,000 years and didn't expect anyone would actually dare to storm his heavenly spirit sect. He questioned whether they genuinely believed he was dead and gone. Someone in the crowd recognized the heavenly spirit ancestor's voice, while someone else wondered if he was still alive. Ning Tianling descended from above. The crowd erupted. Some couldn't believe it was really him. Some called it their lucky day to witness a living legend, and someone else guessed he had to be a one-revolution mysterious immortal. Yin Tianxiang realized that even though mysterious immortal and one-revolution mysterious immortal only differed by 2 words, the gap between them was massive. Legendary Dao 9. Revolution mysterious immortal, with each revolution adding a layer of heaven. 9 revolutions reaching heaven beyond heaven. The difference between just one and all 9 was overwhelming. And compared to a basic mysterious immortal, it wasn't even close. So, with their ancestor still alive, the heavenly spirit sect had hope again. Ning Tianling noted how, after 10,000 years, the heavenly spirit sect almost crumbled at the hands of a few juniors, which just proved how incompetent Yin Tianxiang really was. Yin Tianxiang claimed he had given everything, but those people were just too strange, too sinister. Liu Ruyan figured her master had wanted her to stir things up and boost the sect's reputation. But whatever happened to Xiaozhan had wrecked all of that, not to mention how every one of his senior brothers and sisters turned out more twisted than the last, dragging every plan down with them. Ning Tianling declared he would deal with Yin Tianxiang later, but first, those little beasts had to be handled. Since their master hadn't disciplined them, he would handle it personally and erase them. A colossal palm formed above, shaking the earth beneath it. Then Li Jin jumped in, calling Ning Tianling an old bastard and questioning how he even dared to act as their master's substitute. He declared Ning Tianling deserved to die. Ning Tianling brushed him off with a scoff, dodging the blade without effort. Then, his own body twitched on its own and that made him flinch. Li Jin charged again, telling him to take it. The audience whispered whether he'd just dropped to his knees, and whether he really was a one-revolution mysterious immortal. Meanwhile, Yin Tianxiang called out to his ancestor, while Liu Ruyan checked if he had dropped to his knees the moment he stepped onto the stage. Back at the fight, Ning Tianling pressed Li Jin about what sort of sorcery that was, and pointed out that he clearly avoided the strike, yet his body collapsed on its own to catch the sword. Li Jin labeled it the 100% block the sword, and Ning Tianling puzzled over what kind of immortal technique could carry such an absurd title. Su Yunyun flung her sword. The brief flicker of hope sparked by the heavenly spirit ancestor's arrival crumbled within seconds. Yin Tianxiang voiced the question on behalf of his ancestor, wondering if that marked the fall of the heavenly spirit sect. Su Yunyun warned that if he kept running his mouth about replacing their master, he might as well drop dead. He could quit howling and follow the others down immediately. Meanwhile, Liu Ruyan broke down, questioning how that disaster fell on her ancestor and martial uncles. She figured her master and the rest had already perished. Xiaozhan sat at the center of it all. She couldn't wrap her head around how the trash not only powered up out of nowhere, but also pulled in all those allies, leaving her to realize that the joke was on her. She urged Su Yunyun to end her life, but Su Yunyun spun around, leaving her dumbfounded. Liu Ruyan demanded to know why she refused, and Su Yunyun explained that since her junior brother Xiaozhan had spared her, she had no reason to bother. Liu Ruyan pressed whether she didn't worry she might retaliate later if spared. Su Yunyun shot back, asking if she even qualified. Liu Ruyan crumpled. Meanwhile, Su Yunyun checked in with Xiaozhan about retrieving Hong Fengquang's bones, and he confirmed he'd gathered them all. She turned to Bai Qiyu next. He confirmed his task was finished, and as she remarked that he came all that way just to drop a load, she questioned what the point of that even was. He offered to do more, and she mused that although the manga pumped him up and polished his head, it also erased his brain. She told him to leave it alone and head back. That day, the Heavenly Spirit Sect vanished, and whispers of a strange new group called the Heaven and Earth Sect began to circulate. Elsewhere, Yi Feng lounged at the Shogunate mountain range, reclining beneath his umbrella. He mused that the salted fish lifestyle had lost its flavor because he wanted to reel one in, but the local fish kept outwitting him. A tug came without warning. He muttered that the fishing still worked, since one more took the hook. As he dropped it into his bucket, the system pinged him. It congratulated him on the rising reputation of the Heaven and Earth Sect and dropped 50 flyers into his lap. He guessed the credit belonged to the old fogies in Jiangping City, who had been spreading the word since he hadn't lifted a finger. A few more rookies had drifted in recently, and the disciple count had climbed to 35. He calculated that if those 50 flyers hit the right targets, they could push the roster to 70 and close in on the goal of 100, which meant his time to cultivate was inching closer. Yun Tiantian zipped over the mountain ranges, eyes scanning the distant skyline. She mulled over whether the mortal might be in the city. The memory of Shawanda Mountain still felt unreal when she revisited it. Less a battle, more a fever dream. Since back then, she carried the title of Immortal Supreme and yet had to depend on a handful of beef jerky from that mortal to stay alive, which ended up landing her millions of gold coins in debt. Then her gaze locked onto a black parasol and something about it screamed, "Holy treasure." Feng, somewhere nearby, grumbled about more mouths showing up lately and cash drying up fast, wondering aloud what he was supposed to do. And the second his voice hit her ears, she knew it. He ranted about some woman from Shawanda Mountain who promised him money but vanished without a trace, claimed women weren't reliable, and if he'd known better, he would have let her rot in that hidden tunnel. She shot back with a cold question about who he planned to let rot. He casually greeted her as Big Sister and asked if she came to repay her debt, but she demanded to know who he just called Big Sister. He threw back a why not and teased that someone with her strength and centuries of cultivation could probably count as a grandma. Steel scraped free in a blink. She leveled her blade at him and pressed if he didn't worry about getting sliced open. He barely reacted and nudged the weapon aside with his fingers. She pushed harder, questioned whether he really believed she'd hesitate, but he reminded her she wasn't one for empty threats, and if she meant to kill him, she would have done it long ago. He brought up the deal they made when she was healing, how she swore not to harm him, and warned that if she broke that oath, her cultivation would collapse, her Tao heart would shatter, and her entire bloodline would vanish, so he tossed the question back. Was it worth it? Rage bubbled up, but her attention flicked back when he changed the subject out of nowhere. He noted it had been a while, and mentioned she looked even better than before. She scoffed and decided to let it pass for now, then asked if he meant to leave her standing there forever, and he replied that wasn't happening, and pointed to a seat. She couldn't help thinking that he had an infuriating streak, but occasionally pulled off the charm. He mentioned grabbing some fresh wild cucumbers, said they were great, but she shot down the offer, wondering who would even want that. He pressed her to at least try one. She found herself puzzled. She ignored top-tier elixirs without blinking, so why couldn't she reject this dumb cucumber? Her gaze drifted back to the parasol and she asked where he got it. He claimed he forgot, which left her skeptical. How could a mortal just forget the origin of a holy treasure? He offered that it might have been a gift, and she wanted to know from who. He guessed it came from a female friend, who was probably a cultivator too. That mention of a female friend plus a gifted holy treasure made her suspect that this guy attracted more attention than he let on. He asked what was bugging her, and guessed she also admired the parasol, but she replied that it looked hideous, and she wanted to toss it. That got him swearing, and he barked back that without it, he'd have nothing to use while fishing under that brutal sun. She promised to give him another one, but only if he ditched the old one, and he asked if it was going to be red, then shrugged and agreed, though deep down he griped that women were way too much work. He told her to stick around a few more days so he could show her the streets and sights of Jiangping City, but she let him know she'd probably be gone soon. She reflected that too much had unfolded recently. Secrets unraveling across the Xianzhang continent, the truth of her own reincarnation, all of it reshaping her world. In the past, she would have jumped at the chance to tour the local culture of Jiangping, but at that point, everything had already spun far past what she could handle. He checked what was going on with her, and she brushed it off. She came over to hand him money back then. 5 million gold coins, everything she had on her, and he gave his thanks. She brought him an elixir too, and once he took it, he'd be able to jump straight from a mortal to a martial spirit. He figured she really counted as a solid friend, and threw out that he'd soon rise as a legendary martial spirit. He remembered that time in Nansha when he glimpsed a martial spirit in action, and that powerful presence still stuck with him. And back then, he'd also been determined to reach that terrifying level. She figured that after this, she might not get the chance to see him again. So she burned through a fortune to grab an elixir that could push a mortal into martial spirit territory without drawbacks. After all, when chaos erupts later, martial cultivators stand a better shot at survival than plain mortals. He checked if he could take it now, and she confirmed it, but warned that if the power overwhelmed him, she'd shield him, and he gave another round of thanks. She reminded him again that the elixir packed a serious punch, so once he swallowed it, his body would hurt, and she double-checked whether he felt ready. He confirmed he was, and gave the green light. She gave the go-ahead and told him to take it, and he agreed. She dropped to the ground to sit. He followed suit. They settled into meditation across from each other. He focused, working on sensing the pill's energy. 3/4 of an hour in, he looked annoyed. Meanwhile, she figured he had some serious grit, pulling it off without even flinching. Then he checked with her if the elixir was supposed to take this long. He mentioned his legs were sore and questioned the lack of any reaction. She froze up, clearly thrown. She pressed him, checking if he meant nothing happened at all, and he replied by asking if needing to pee counted. She told him to close his eyes and try again, and he checked if a food poisoning type stomachache counted. She couldn't believe it. She explained that the elixir came from an immortal, so failure was off the table, while he told her not to poke him there. She asked how that could be possible, and concluded the elixir's power had vanished inside him. He denied being that ruined already and figured he'd finally be free from that ridiculous system. But it turned out he still needed to obediently recruit disciples. She apologized for crushing his hopes, but he brushed it off and said it wasn't her fault. And when it came to cultivation, even if he was immortal, he wasn't the regular kind of mortal. When she saw him again later, she'd meet a version of him that would definitely shock her. She figured she should be the one offering comfort, but didn't expect him to end up comforting her, which made him both endearing and frustrating. She told him she'd be looking forward to that surprise next time. A few moments later, Yun Tiantian soared through the sky. She pinpointed the location. She flew toward the massive hole tearing open the heavens. It was a portal, and it sucked her into another space. Plenty of cultivators had gathered. Some were human, some were beast-like. All of them faced the monument at the center. Then, a voice echoed, declaring that the Xianzhang Primal Chaos Monument would open in a year, and if they reached enlightenment, they might make it onto the list. The masked man turned toward Lord Mieshi and relayed that every expert had already taken their seats. Mieshi considered that very good, since he had mapped this out over countless epochs, waited just as long, and now, in this very epoch, all 234 Heaven Chosen Ones had supposedly been brought together. Among them, reincarnators, heavenly Taoists, and gifted experts stacked high across time were meant to assist him in attaining the role of Xianzhang Heavenly Tao in just 1 year, and the masked man offered congratulations. Mieshi admitted he couldn't sit still anymore and wanted a look at his Heaven Chosen Ones. Then he abruptly questioned where they were hiding. The masked man explained that of the 234 immortal pillars, the majority still stood empty, with less than half actually filled, and he pressed Mieshi for an explanation. Mieshi stated that by his calculations, each of those 234 should have gathered there through the cycles of karma, regardless of cause, and he demanded to know what had broken down. The masked man pointed out the worst part, noting that among the 18 red pillars closest to the monument, only 6 or 7 held anyone at all, even though each pillar of light matched individual fate and couldn't be switched freely, and more than a dozen figures were still absent from the most critical red pillar. He floated the possibility that someone might be tampering with the process. Mieshi wanted clarification, and the masked man reminded him of that incident some time ago where someone in the Northern Sea demolished the Baiyangzhen Palace in the Void Realm using nothing but a wood carving. He added that over in the Central Continent, a black-robed figure had dismantled all 4 desolate beasts without help. Mieshi brushed it off, stating that while those two had decent strength, back then he was still in a weakened state, meaning they ranked as nothing special. And frankly, neither of them even had the qualifications to access the pillars. So how could they affect the grand scheme? After that, the masked man stopped pushing. A few epochs earlier, Mieshi had divined that the Xianzhang continent would peak in power during this exact epoch, and birth exactly 234 Heaven Chosen Ones with seismic talent, with the count locked in. No more, no fewer. The masked man considered how those 2 disruptors weren't even part of that list and clearly didn't qualify, and he asked again why so many seats remained unfilled. Mieshi maintained that the astrological readings came out clean, no lurking risks, so the only logical conclusion was that the appointed time hadn't fully arrived yet. Most of the chosen had indeed emerged, barring a few, and while many had awakened over the past couple of years, there was still a year left before the Xianzhang Primal Chaos Monument opened. So those missing probably hadn't awakened yet. They'd just have to wait and see. Elsewhere, Yun Tiantian sat in meditation. In the midst of this, she became aware of Bai Piao Piao. She was also meditating, exuding calm and beauty. Yun Tiantian noted her elegance and admired her looks. Bai Piao Piao smiled and offered an introduction. Yun Tiantian returned it. Then she jumped slightly when curses sounded behind her. She recognized the voices as belonging to the 5 Haifei tribe brothers and figured they had also been ranked among the Red Pillars. Even though they seemed to be in the middle of a heated dispute, they stormed off. And still, those were Red Pillar candidates. Back in the Haifei tribe's Void Realm territory, one of the 5 spoke directly to Jang 5, brought up that the Xianzhang Primal Chaos Monument would open in a year, and asked what he planned to do about it. And another chimed in that the flyer wasn't worth fussing over, since they already had a Red Pillar and would inevitably be acknowledged anyway. But Jang 5 challenged that and remarked that the flyer felt extraordinary. He noted a faint surge of great power from it and mentioned having no clue what kind of material it was crafted from, then questioned if they truly believed the Heaven and Earth Sect was just a regular place. Jung Won acknowledged the flyer looked impressive, but with the Xianzhang Primal Chaos Monument about to open, he questioned whether the trip was necessary. He figured grasping the mysteries of that monument would do more for someone than joining any Holy Land, since making the list was a rare shot at both power and recognition. Jung 5 dismissed it and remarked that he didn't buy into Miyeshi being decent. When he questioned if that name sounded trustworthy, his brothers pushed back, calling it just a name and pointing out how much effort he had poured into Xianzhang continent. They challenged him on how he could brush off someone like that. Jung 5 shrugged off their reaction, saying he didn't care. He felt something tugging him toward the Heaven and Earth Sect, so he was definitely making that trip. Jung 1 pushed again, asking if he truly meant to split up the 5 of them, a group that had always stood together. Jung 5 didn't flinch, said he did, and repeated that he was heading to the Heaven and Earth Sect. He said goodbye, and Jung 1 gave in, replying that if he was that set on leaving their bond behind, then he could go. He had no idea what the Xianzhang Primal Chaos Monument even meant and wanted to drag the rest of them after some foggy fantasy. He needed to drop it completely. He tossed the flyer straight into the lava. Meanwhile, over at the Heaven and Earth Sect, the disciples were doing great. Some lounged around the floor, throwing themselves into card games. Some tightened their harnesses and invited others to join in whatever weird challenge they'd cooked up. Yifeng muttered that he was about to lose it and figured something had to be seriously messed up. He couldn't believe the number of disciples had climbed to maybe 70, and not a single one had ever come to him for anything related to cultivation. Nobody seemed even slightly interested in learning. Instead, they filled their days with pranks or diving into novels and manhwas stashed in the library. Then it clicked. Those disciples probably had average talent to begin with and never imagined they'd make it as cultivators. So instead, they were just hanging around, wasting time, eating, waiting for the end. He started wondering if that was all they ever planned to do there. He threw his arms to the sky and cursed the whole bunch for swarming in just to milk what they could. Qing Huanxiang walked in and asked what was going on. He grumbled that all disciples should be rounded up and dragged to him. Jang 5 hung around the library, grinning the whole time. He called it incredible, completely unreal. Since joining the Heaven and Earth Sect just as he wanted, he'd gotten himself buried in that library from dawn to dusk, and after flipping through books for a few days, his cultivation and everything else jumped way up. He mentioned wrapping up another book, and gushed about how that one hit even harder. He figured that even though his personal path hadn't shown up yet, he was dead sure he'd find it somewhere in that massive library, and honestly, he was just relieved he made the choice to come, because otherwise, he'd have missed out on such a gift. Considering how even the Tao hidden in that one script probably outclassed what the Xianzhang Primal Chaos Monument offered, he casually mentioned how perfect it'd be if his 4 older brothers were around too. Out of nowhere, Qing Huanxiang notified them that the Sect Master had ordered every disciple to report to the Heaven and Earth Palace Hall. By the Sect Master's command, the entire disciple group got summoned to the Heaven and Earth Palace Hall. One disciple muttered about their master finally showing up, and another pushed for everyone to move faster. Not long after, Yifeng cleared his throat and checked in with the disciples on how their training had been going lately. Jang 5 registered how lucky he was to finally catch a glimpse of their master again. One of the others mentally noted he needed to speed things up next time. Another quietly admired how flawless his own stance looked. Yifeng clocked the silence and wasn't surprised at all, since he'd given each one a good boost when they joined the sect and even tricked whoever needed tricking. But back then, none of those idiots gave his words a shred of respect. He turned to one of the disciples and told him to go all in on a slash to show what he had, and the guy confirmed it. The disciple looked dead serious while lifting a sword. He let it rip with full power. Li Jin marveled at how fierce that strike came out. Someone else caught how the swing literally sliced the air clean. Another instantly crowned the 38th the Sword King. Yifeng turned to another and ordered him to face off with the wooden dummy, and he agreed without hesitation. He smacked the dummy, and it didn't even wobble. He gave it everything. Zhang 5 admired how brutal his 29th senior brother went, especially knowing that the dummy was a top-tier immortal artifact, and the Tao strength it held could reflect the force delivered. So, if it even budged a bit, that alone would be wild. Yifeng told him to step aside and rotated in the next. Still no movement, so he rotated in another. The dummy still refused to react, and Yifeng got completely done watching his disciple resort to biting it. He hurled a string of curses and ripped into them all for being totally useless. Zhang 5 mulled over whether he'd gotten dragged into the mess too, and assumed the senior brothers and sisters had to be monsters already. Yifeng's fury lit up as he blasted the dummy apart with a single kick. One disciple guessed that was the same dummy none of them had managed to budge, and another claimed he had cracked it like it was brittle wood. Yifeng threw them a glare, and Zhang 5 reasoned no wonder he was furious, so he had better crank up the effort or risk getting flung aside like scrap. Meanwhile, Yifeng noted they couldn't even shift the dummy, and since none of them pushed back after the insults, they clearly didn't count for anything. The freeloaders were outrageous, and while he grumbled about them leeching off him, he entertained the thought of tossing out a few tricks if he ever cultivated again. But if this kept up, once 100 turned up, every one of them would get dumped. He waved them off, and when Li Jin brought up that they'd need to grind twice as hard now, Su Yunyun nodded and added that catching up to the big senior was the bare minimum. One of the disciples called it a small goal to shake off the trash tag. Another aimed straight for the Tibetan scripture pavilion. Another pulled the rest in, claiming he was chasing the Shrouding the Heavens plotline. Yifeng dismissed the lot as hopeless. Meanwhile, Mieshi kept loitering near the Xianjiang Primal Chaos Monument. He wanted a read on how long it had dragged on. The masked man informed him a month had ticked by, estimated more folks should have filtered in already, and speculated they might scrape together a dozen more. He drifted toward the edge for a scan of the Heaven Chosen Ones. He started getting uneasy, since not only had no one new rolled up in a month, but one person had actually vanished. He concluded the lesser one had to be from the red place, the one he ranked highest on the board. Panic kicked in. He reached out telepathically to Zhang 1, who caught the signal right away. Zhang 1 shot toward the monument instantly. He greeted Mieshi, and Mieshi brushed off the formalities. He wanted to know why one of Zhang 1's 5 brothers had disappeared. Zhang 1 explained that his 5th younger brother had gone off to handle something personal and would return once finished. Mieshi found that acceptable, but warned that with less than a year until the Primal Chaos Monument opened, wandering around too long could cost him a once-in-a-lifetime shot. Zhang 1A promised to send someone to alert the 5th and urge a swift return. The masked man told Mieshi not to stress, since awakenings had no set timing. And lately, fewer people awakened anyway. But 234 was fixed, so if there were fewer now, more would appear later. Zhang 3 asked Zhang 1 what was going on and why Mieshi had called on him, and Zhang 1 explained it was about their 5th younger brother. Mieshi had noticed his absence, which showed how seriously he took the 5 of them. Despite Zhang 5's poor choices, he was still family, and they couldn't leave him behind. They had to bring him back. They all agreed with that. Zhang 1A asked who would go bring him back, and Zhang 4 volunteered. Zhang 1 gave the okay but warned him not to fall under Zhang 5's influence, or he'd end up just as stubborn. Zhang 4 told him not to worry, and to wait for his good news, promising a quick return. He then shot out from the portal. Zhang 4 mentioned that he would search for him, using the address printed on the flyer. 2 days passed before he reached Jiangping City. He remarked that the location had to be close to the Heaven and Earth sect, so he planned to reach out to Zhang 5. Meanwhile, Zhang 5 remained in the library. He found the atmosphere refreshing, free from scheming and petty competition, filled instead with senior brothers and sisters who cared about him. His 4th senior brother ran him through a mini cooking lesson, and his 7th senior brother handed him a chick of the 9 Heavens Phoenix, which could eventually serve as a mount. Joining the Heaven and Earth sect had clearly been the best choice imaginable. Right then, his communication talisman began to vibrate. After a few beats, he checked whether Zhang 4 had really arrived, and Zhang 4 informed him that Zhang 1 and the rest were all deeply concerned. At that moment, he intended to bring him back since the Xianjiang Primal Chaos Monument was about to open, a chance that wouldn't come twice. But Zhang 5 questioned what he meant, and pointed out that he had already made himself at home there. Zhang 4 faltered at the word settled. He commented on how naive he had always been, but reminded him that recognizing right from wrong remained essential, and pressed him on what could possibly outweigh gaining insight from the Xianzhang Primal Chaos Monument, and Zhang 5 replied that his clarity was exactly why he chose to stay. Maybe he didn't trust him yet, but once he returned to the Heaven and Earth sect and took a look around, the truth would become clear. Zhang 4 told him he ought to heed his brother's guidance since he was still too young, but Zhang 5 countered that if he tagged along, he would absolutely change his view. Zhang 4 gave in, saying he would go with him for a look. He felt curious about what kind of scheme the Heaven and Earth sect had used to throw off his fifth younger brother. Shortly after, Zhang 4 stepped onto the island. He couldn't speak. He questioned whether he had lost the ability to fly and considered that it might just be an intense feeling of suppression, but quickly revised that into something more precise, realizing it resembled a domain shaped by distinct laws. Zhang 5 laughed it off, tossing out a casual line about not needing to panic since the space around the Heaven and Earth sect worked outside the usual rules of Xianzhang continent. The structure there probably beat the immortal worlds by a mile, and it wasn't just about flying. Drop an immortal into that kind of place and they'd end up flipping over too. But Zhang 4 brushed it off, saying he wasn't panicking, just thrown off when he first got there. He figured that was probably it anyway, since if the place really was empty, there was no way they could bluff Zhang 5, not when Xianzhang continent had lived through endless catastrophes and been home to countless big shots. He figured it wasn't even shocking anymore that a pocket of space like that had managed to survive. Whether it packed power or not really came down to whether any real expert had settled inside. He froze for a second when the old boatman suddenly touched down right in front of him. He got a good look and realized the guy ranked way up there, and the thought crossed his mind. Was this old man who rowed boats seriously some hidden expert? He figured he wasn't exactly weak, but in that space, he'd jumped with everything he had and barely cleared a foot. And then, that old man casually stepped 3 feet away, and there was no way anyone could deny that wasn't expert material, and the old man just brushed it off, saying panicking wasn't needed. Zhang 4 turned to Zhang 5, asking why he didn't give him a heads up about someone like that, mentioning he nearly offended the guy. Zhang 5 waved it off, saying it was fine and he'd get used to it, but Zhang 4 made it clear he wasn't looking to piss off any top-tier figures for no reason. Still, he pointed out, a guy like that should definitely be someone from the upper crust of the Heaven and Earth sect, probably even a Great Elder. Zhang 5 shrugged, tossing out that their Great Elder could wipe out Xianzhang continent with a single punch, and the old guy was just a boatman who hadn't even gotten into the sect. Zhang 4 stared at him, asking how he could talk that way about a senior like that when the man might overhear and lose his temper. But the old man chimed in, admitting it himself. Just a boatman. Nothing more. Joining the Heaven and Earth sect had been his dream, but his talent didn't cut it. So for him, just being able to row a boat nearby already felt like an honor. Zhang 4 couldn't even process that, wondering what kind of nonsense he was hearing. He turned back to Zhang 5, asking if the two of them had teamed up to mess with him, because how could someone like that old man really just be a boatman? But Zhang 5 insisted it wasn't a joke and told him to take another look. Off in the distance, the old ladies were dancing to some music. They were fully stretched out and moving around like they were having the time of their lives. Zhang 4 could barely process it, wondering how they even pulled off those kinds of moves with the gravity still pressing down on the island. He stammered a bit trying to ask Zhang 5 about those ants, and Zhang 5 said they were just regular old aunts who sometimes dropped by the Heaven and Earth sect to pick up trash and lend a hand with chores. Zhang 4 turned that over in his head, fixating on those two words, trash collection and chores, and felt like he didn't recognize what they meant anymore. Zhang 4 wanted Zhang 5 to spill something. He wondered whether the Heaven and Earth sect truly matched what stood before him, and when Zhang 5 denied it, he found that comforting. But Zhang 5 pointed out that the spectacle barely counted as drizzle and couldn't stand in for the sect's true weight. He needed to pay attention because Shuru Rong was present, and that butcher's blade might outrank high-grade immortal weapons. He needed to clock the scales, the old man's walking stick, and the woman's headband. They were right there. They spotted Louu Dasheng. Zhang 4 figured the dung picker's flourish hit peak elegance, and it reeked. Zhang 5 explained that the guy served as their Heaven and Earth sect's official dung-picking ambassador, earned praise from the master, and even pulled formal greetings from fellow disciples as Ambassador Louu. Still, he couldn't be their representative, since the sect overflowed with crouching tigers and hidden dragons, not to mention the master, the disciples, the 4 scum groups in their fancy getups, and the sect's guardian beast. Jang 4 accused him of putting on airs and admitted it looked great. He pressed for the method to get into the Heaven and Earth sect, but Jang 5 wondered if he hadn't come to haul him back. Jang 4 remarked that Miyashi gave off shady vibes, and the Heaven and Earth sect held the righteous path. A moment later, Jang 5 introduced him to Yi Feng. They broke into celebration once Yi Feng gave the nod. Another moment passed, and Jang 4 browsed boxing master Tyson. Over half a month vanished in a flash. The brothers found themselves in the Hefei tribe, deep in the extreme inflamed land. Jang 1A brought up that Jang 4 and 5 had vanished for more than half a month, and questioned whether Jang 4 had crumbled under Jang 5's pressure to join the Heaven and Earth sect. Jang 2 wondered what he meant and challenged whether he still doubted Jang 4's resolve, while Jang 3 reminded them that before leaving, he swore to drag Jang 5 back himself. Jang 1 admitted it, but pointed out that their tribe's heavenly Dhyana flame lotus, nurtured for 1,000 years, would ripen soon. They 5 brothers had vowed to claim it together and awaken the extreme inflamed body, so he hoped all 5 could share the gift at once. Out of nowhere, Jang 5 called to them and announced their return. Jang 2 welcomed them back, and Jang 3 praised Jang 4's solid performance. Jang 1 mentioned they could now reunite to seize the Flame Lotus, or they could wait for the Xianzhang Primal Chaos Monument to open, but Jang 4 dismissed the monument altogether. The 3 brothers froze. Jang 4 revealed he had joined the Heaven and Earth Sect too, and they returned to pull the elder brothers into it. Jang 1 spewed blood. He demanded to know how even Jang 4 got swayed, cursed the betrayal, and accused him of getting strung along, insisting he shattered their trust. He questioned what they made him do and scolded him for falling into it, but Jang 4 responded that neither he nor Jang 5 had lost their heads. Right now, the 3 of them were still frogs stuck at the bottom of the well, but if they visited the Heaven and Earth sect, their view would shift, so he urged the big brothers to come take a look. But Jang 1 told him to quit it because they weren't going anywhere, and Jang 2 mourned the drag-down attempt. Jang 4 and 5 tried to argue, but Jang 1 laid out 2 options. They could either leave the Heaven and Earth sect, tag along quietly, and wait for the Xianzhang Primal Chaos Monument to activate, or go back to the Heaven and Earth sect and never cross paths again. Jang 5 wondered how they were supposed to walk away from the Heaven and Earth sect, while Jang 4 muttered that Jang 1 only had 1 gear. Jang 5 figured they should hold off until the rage cooled a little before heading over, and Jang 4 shrugged in agreement. Jang 5, with that settled, waved the idea off and mentioned they'd catch the 3 older brothers some other time. Jang 3 reminded Jang 1 to keep up with his medicine, while Jang 2 reasoned that there was no point in getting worked up, since Jang 4 and 5 were still kids in their eyes. And Jang 3 gave a quick nod, adding that they'd track them down once the Flame Lotus ripened. After a few hours, word came that the Flame Lotus was nearly ready. Jang 1 confirmed it, calling it the Flame Lotus their tribe had watched over for generations. Now, finally ripe. Out of nowhere, Feng Xiaoxian let out a mocking laugh, tossing out a jab about there being no shares left for them, which made them spin around to ask who was talking. He wondered aloud if they still hadn't figured it out, and they checked if he was Feng Xiaoxian, the one among the blue pillars of light. Jang 1 demanded to know what his angle was, and he replied that he had, of course, set his sights on the Flame Lotus. He threw in that he also intended to snatch their fate, questioning how they, stuck as heavenly immortals, got to sit on the red immortal pillar, while he, a peak golden immortal, got shoved to the blue one. Jang 1 answered that heaven decided everything, and even if he outmatched them, it made no difference, because they were marked by destiny and couldn't be killed by him. Feng Xiaoxian waved it off and claimed he'd simply roughed them up after seizing the lotus. They pushed back and refused to let him pull it off. Feng Xiaoxian launched a flurry of slashes. He wiped out the 3 brothers instantly. Then he muttered that it seemed like the right moment. Jang 1 called for him to back off. He asked if they really couldn't let it go and pointed out that the Flame Lotus their tribe had protected for thousands of years now rested in his grasp. He asked if that was all the red immortal pillars destined ones could offer. Then he wondered aloud if they weren't supposed to be 5 brothers. And if they were so close, where were the other 2 losers? He taunted them to summon the missing pair, since maybe the outcome wouldn't be quite so pathetic. Right then, Zhang 4 and 5 stepped onto the scene. Feng Xiaoxian blinked and questioned if they had seriously come. Zhang 1, watching the two close in on a golden immortal, wrestled with whether anything could change now or if there was even a shot at reclaiming the lotus, then warned them to stay back. Zhang 4 asked how he was holding up, but Zhang 1 brushed him off, insisting that Feng Xiaoxian couldn't kill them, and urged him to drag Zhang 5 away quickly, since Feng Xiaoxian was overwhelmingly strong. Zhang 4 dismissed it, claiming Zhang 5 could handle him. Zhang 1 snapped back, asking how he expected Zhang 5 to stand up to a golden immortal. Zhang 4 scoffed at the title, saying golden immortal meant nothing when Zhang 5 had already become a mysterious immortal, which left Zhang 1 staring at him like he'd lost it. Meanwhile, Feng Xiaoxian commented that he hadn't expected them to walk in willingly, but he went rigid when Zhang 5 casually lopped off his arm. His scream bounced off the stone walls. The three elder brothers stared so hard, their eyes looked ready to pop. Feng Xiaoxian glared at Zhang 5, demanding to know how the weakest of the Heifei 5 had power like that. Zhang 1 swung his gaze to Zhang 4, shouting that Feng Xiaoxian was a golden immortal. But Zhang 4 brushed it off, saying the guy wasn't even on par with the dancing ants back home, and Zhang 5 was a mysterious immortal. Zhang 1 muttered that he shouldn't have acted like a jerk and should have just spoken up. Zhang 4 pointed out it obviously had everything to do with the Heaven and Earth Sect, repeating what he mentioned earlier about the power there being way beyond anything they could handle. Zhang 2 wondered aloud if the Heaven and Earth Sect was really that powerful, and Zhang 1 threw in that someone reached the mysterious immortal realm in just a month, something that shouldn't even be possible, not even after comprehending the Xianzhang Primal Chaos Monument. He turned to Zhang 4 and brought up his cultivation, and Zhang 4 admitted he hadn't broken into the mysterious immortal realm yet, which he considered decent enough. But then Zhang 4 shifted gears and brought up those intermediate-level immortal items, adding that advanced ones were in the mix too, sitting right at peak level. The supposed strength of 100 trash golden immortals meant nothing at all, and the older brothers pressed him about where he got his hands on all those items. Zhang 4 casually threw out that, of course, it all came from the Heaven and Earth Sect too. Zhang 5 cut in, calling it nonsense, brushing the treasures off as worthless junk, and the older brothers checked if that meant the items were fake. Zhang 5 clarified that it wasn't about authenticity, but those immortal items were stacked up like trash over there, totally ignored, since people there only cared about chasing the Tao. He shot a glance at Zhang 4 and mentioned they were supposed to learn from their senior brothers and sisters. Yet there he was, pulling stunts like that, questioning if he wasn't just dragging their master's name through the mud. Zhang 4 lowered his head and admitted he messed up, claiming he just wanted to show off, then agreed to stash everything away. The three older brothers barely had time to react before pills landed in their mouths out of nowhere. Zhang 2 realized his injuries were gone, while Zhang 1 noticed his cultivation had improved too. He turned to Zhang 5 and checked what they had just consumed, and Zhang 5 offhandedly mentioned their second guardian gave him some dog food. Zhang 3 furrowed his brow and guessed it might be actual dog food going by the name, while Zhang 1 figured no, it had to be some kind of elixir. Then, out of nowhere, Zhang 5 declared that it was correct, and he was going to get revenge for his big brothers, while Feng Xiaoxian interrupted and asked what he planned to do. He recalled that only a month ago, that guy hadn't even been a golden immortal, but now he was already a mysterious immortal, so he realized he messed up and quickly begged him not to end him. Zhang 1 stopped Zhang 5, reasoning that since the guy had a heavenly destiny, they couldn't kill him either. He reminded them that the guy was one of the 234 people marked for the Primal Chaos Monument's opening, so he would definitely appear when the time came. And even though the urge to end him was there, nothing they did could overwrite Heaven's script. Feng Xiaoxian nodded, agreeing that being Heaven chosen meant his status couldn't be shaken, not even if he was just a mysterious immortal. But then he collapsed right there, dead on the ground, and the older brothers blinked in disbelief. Zhang 1 blurted that the guy was supposed to be Heaven chosen, and he turned to Zhang 5 to ask how he managed that. Zhang 5 responded without hesitation that not even Heaven had control over the people from the Heaven and Earth Sect. Zhang 2 laughed and looked over to Zhang 4 and Zhang 5, and while Zhang 1 checked if they could join the Heaven and Earth Sect, Zhang 3 reminded him they were brothers. Zhang 5 nodded and said of course the whole reason they returned was to bring the big brothers along. Zhang 1 remarked how prestigious the Heaven and Earth Sect sounded, then wondered if they'd even take them, and Zhang 2 and 3 chimed in that they were totally in. Zhang 5 mentioned ordinary folks would never get in, but if someone had a flyer, then that meant fate brought them in. and they could skip straight to joining. The older brothers lit up, saying that was perfect, and they'd pack up and be ready. So all they had to do was wait. Jang 5 replied they'd head back first and catch them at the Heaven and Earth Sect, which got a cheerful response that it was fine, no big deal. Jang 3 mumbled that they'd really been clueless before, and Jang 2 praised Jang 5 for having sharp eyes, while Jang 1 nodded, clearly hyped since reaching mysterious immortal status only took a month. Then he froze, suddenly remembering what he'd done with his flyer. He blurted out that he threw it into the magma, and his two brothers told him they were heading off first. He spun around and asked what they meant by that and whether they were seriously going to ditch their brother. Jang 2 explained that since he usually looked out for them, he wanted to get into the Heaven and Earth Sect quickly so he could get strong enough to protect him, and Jang 3 backed him up, adding that they'd go first so he wouldn't feel rushed to recover it. Jang 1 figured it was a plastic brotherhood. It felt reckless, and he questioned what kind of sin had landed him there. He dove into the magma without hesitation. He declared himself on fire. Days slipped by while Jang 1 remained trapped in the magma, still clawing through it for the flyer he held so close. Half a month down the line, Mieshi stirred again. He remarked that another month had gone by. There ought to be more people around by then, mostly from the red and blue immortal pillars, and it would be better if those two had heavier numbers. But his eyes nearly tore out of his skull once he glanced at the pillars. He blurted that there had originally been 7 in the red immortal pillar, yet after 2 months, not a single one had joined. Only 2 remained. The Haifei 5 had flat out vanished, and he demanded to know what kind of madness that even was. Teng Siyuan figured Mieshi shouldn't stress. Maybe the Haifei 5 had private business, and he gestured toward their avatars still holding place. Mieshi turned toward the red immortal pillar. He figured, sure enough, avatars drained some of a cultivator's psychic essence and cultivation too, and if they really bailed, their avatars wouldn't hang around wasting energy like that. Still, the red pillar felt off, so he shifted his attention to the blue pillar. He checked if one vanished there too, and noted that time, not even an avatar stuck around. He demanded to know what was going on, and summoned the astral projection. Mieshi concluded the guy was dead. He pressed to verify if he actually died. Teng Siyuan registered that one of the Heaven Chosen Ones bit it, which meant trouble. According to Mieshi's projection, 10 months after that exact point, the Zhanjiang continent would hit a peak of strength, and after ages of buildup, the number of strong figures would lock in at 234. That matched a technique of Heaven's will, and regardless of mishaps, balance, or logic, those 234 weren't changing because the result already settled. Mieshi snapped, wanting answers, and warned that with one down his plan wouldn't even launch. He jolted and spun toward the red pillar. He noticed even the avatars of the Haifei 5 vanished by then. He cursed and demanded to know what just happened, then summoned the star signs again. A little later, pills scattered from the bottle on the ground. Mieshi noted he'd burned through over a dozen elixirs and still hit a wall. Feng Xiaoxian's death stayed a mystery, and the Haifei 5's withdrawal made no sense, so the whole thing felt murky. It felt like some massive hand kept pulling strings from behind the curtain. He figured he'd been the one maneuvering pieces on the board, only to realize someone else had steered him instead. And whoever did it had slipped past his astrological readings like it was nothing. Teng Siyuan mentioned the Haifei 5 might have vanished, but tracking them down was still possible. Though when he brought up the one who had disappeared, Mieshi tossed it back to him, saying he'd have to handle that part himself. Teng Siyuan made it clear he wasn't a Heaven Chosen. Mieshi laid out his plan to trick the heavens and cross the sea, wiping away every trace of aura from his body so thoroughly he'd not just pass for a Heaven Chosen but come out the other side as something entirely new, their connection erased beyond anyone's grasp. Teng Siyuan figured he could manage it and showed his thanks. Mieshi didn't pretend it was a favor with no strings, pointing out he wanted the truth about the hand in the shadows. Since the enemy would zero in on the Heaven Chosen sooner or later, blending into that role gave him a better shot at digging up clues than Mieshi ever could, and he gave a nod of understanding. Mieshi gave his signal, and the baptism began. A massive golden beam slammed down on Teng Siyuan and hoisted him into the air. His mask clattered to the ground. Mieshi gave the go-ahead, and Teng Siyuan confirmed it. Mieshi kept watching as he soared toward the light columns. He let out a breath, admitting the cost had been brutal. But if this worked and the disguise held, the bigger picture might finally settle without more chaos. Whoever had the guts to move against him, he planned to make sure they regretted every second of it. Meanwhile, Jang 1 turned up at the Heaven and Earth Sect. After a couple of weeks combing the area, he tracked down the flyer and snagged himself a spot in the sect. Once inside, he fell right into line, hitting the library every single day with his 4 younger brothers. Out of nowhere, Zhao 5 called them over, telling them to check something out. He was running a clip that had a coffin and background music. The one in front held a baton. 4 others moved behind him with the coffin balanced across their shoulders. Zhao 5 claimed it was Dao. It was their Dao, the one they had been chasing all along. With every glance at the image stored in that jade slip, his power kept climbing, and the others confirmed they could feel it too. Zhang Tu's talisman chimed without warning. Zhang 1 demanded to know who disrupted their enlightenment, and Zhao 2 explained it was Bai Yao, who wanted to know why they'd left the Primal Chaos Hall, wondering whether to inform him about the Heaven and Earth sect and bring him in as well. He turned to Zhao 5, reminding him that he already ranked as senior brother, and asked for his opinion. Zhao 5 explained that their Heaven and Earth sect never concealed anything, so sharing the truth was fine, but joining depended on whether he had a flyer. Even without one, coming to the island to scavenge and get lucky was still better than staring blankly at that Xianzhang Primal Chaos monument. Just then, Bai Yao's talisman rang. Reading the message stunned him. He figured he had to check it out. 1 month later, Miyashi declared Teng Xiyuan worthless and not worth keeping around. They had spent heavily to make him a heaven chosen one. And in a month, not only had he done nothing, but 60 people had vanished. Teng Xiyuan explained he had been cultivating inside the Immortal Pillar, using the aura from the Xianzhang Primal Chaos Monument, and when he opened his eyes, everyone was gone. Miyashi dismissed him as garbage and demanded to know why he was chosen at all, insisting his role was infiltration and intelligence gathering, not retreating into seclusion. Teng Xiyuan admitted his mistake and asked for another shot, claiming he now understood what needed to be done. Miyashi told him to drag himself back in there right away and promised to give him another month, but if he still came up empty, then he could rot for all he cared, and he agreed without a fuss. A few moments after that, Teng Xiyuan greeted one of the cultivators. He gave his name and wondered if they could start a friendship. He ripped away every trace of pretense and approached people with open sincerity, figuring that was the only way they'd believe him, and once clues showed up, he'd have a chance to get something out of it. One day, 2 weeks later, Yuan Chang spoke to Teng Xiyuan. He mentioned that even though they hadn't known each other long, they got along from the start, and he already saw him as a close friend in his heart. So there was something good he felt like sharing, and wanted to know if he was up for it. Teng Xiyuan figured this was finally it, and wondered what exactly this good thing was. Yuan Chang asked if he'd heard why the folks in that Chaos Hall all cleared out, and Teng Xiyuan threw the question back at him. Yuan Chang explained that it began with a man named Bai Yao, who found some treasure-packed land, a place crawling with top-level experts, immortal treasure scattered like pebbles, and some mega-powerful figure running the whole thing. Since Bai Yao went there, he'd made a bunch of friends, who brought their own friends, and then it snowballed, ending with 50 or 60 people heading there all at once, which made Teng Xiyuan swear internally. And thinking that this explained it, he asked if such a dreamland actually existed. Yuan Chang wondered what he was thinking and offered to bring him along for a look, and Teng Xiyuan agreed, figuring that with a place that sounded that divine, he might as well go check it out. He figured that with any luck, he'd finally sniff out the mastermind behind all of this. A few moments later, one of the cultivators wondered where Teng Xiyuan was heading. Another wondered if it was something urgent, and another wondered if he needed a hand, and he brushed them all off, saying it wasn't anything major, just something personal, and he'd be back in a couple of days. He figured, with a bit of irony, that maybe being decent and having a bunch of solid friends wasn't such a bad trade for being the occasional jerk. A few moments later, they reached the island. Yuan Chang mentioned they had arrived, and Teng Xiyuan figured that even if it turned out to be a tiger's den, he wasn't turning back that day. He intended to scour the island from end to end for Miyashi. Suddenly, Bai Yao greeted them and confirmed whether they were Yuan Chang and Teng Xiyuan, both from the Chaos Hall. He recognized them as sharp enough and claimed they were family from then on. Teng Xiyuan wondered if the group had banded together, and Bai Yao explained that since they all came from the Chaos Hall and stuck close, they naturally clicked. He brushed aside concerns about formality, insisted it hadn't been easy to get there, and pushed for drinks until they dropped. Teng Xiyuan decided to play along and hold off until the others were settled before making any moves. Evening fell and laughter rolled across the island. Teng Xiyuan climbed onto the table, cup in hand, completely smashed. A few hours passed, and the sun pierced through to his face, dragging him out of sleep. He cursed getting drunk by accident, but admitted the night paid off. Since the island held plenty of experts and even the Heaven and Earth Sect, he needed to deliver that news to Mieshi fast, but Bai Yao noticed him awake. He pressed him about leaving, accusing him of bailing after a single round, like it was some kind of coward's retreat. Tang Siyuan figured it wasn't that he longed to stay, just that Bai Yao's warmth left no easy exit, and pushing the report to Mieshi by a day wouldn't shift the bigger picture. Evening rolled around and their laughter filled the island once more. Tang Siyuan found himself back on the table, wasted all over again. The next day, he was sprawled out on the ground. He questioned what hit him and realized he had broken through after nothing more than a night of drinking. Tang Siyuan figured he had to retrace what actually went down last night, given how much his head throbbed. He recalled saying that back in his day, he couldn't stand two kinds of people, those who judged by looks and those who acted all superior. And Bai Yao had told him he was drunk, so he should follow him to a better spot. Tang Siyuan wanted to know where they were heading and insisted he wasn't drunk, while Bai Yao just told him he'd find out soon enough. Tang Siyuan hadn't expected to be taken to a junkyard. Bai Yao pointed and confirmed it. Tang Siyuan wondered if it was really just a junkyard, and Bai Yao told him he didn't know anything, so if he didn't trust him, he could start picking stuff up and find out for himself. Tang Siyuan asked if he actually made a breakthrough by rummaging through trash, then muttered that this island was way more twisted than he'd thought. He figured he'd better tell Mieshi about that enemy or things might spiral fast. Still, before that, he should gather another day's haul, since every breakthrough made him more useful. After 7 days of salvaging, Tang Siyuan had already made a name and fully blended into the island. Yuan Shan called out and told him they should move since the Heaven and Earth Sect's trash got dumped that day, and if he lagged, they'd miss it, prompting him to respond that he was on his way. Not only had his cultivation surged, but his mindset also shifted. Each day relaxed, filled with wine, chess, and an easy, beautiful life. The Heaven and Earth Sect had become his conviction, and just like that, another month passed. Tang Siyuan remarked that it was the power of the Great Tao, so it needed to be stashed away. Then he spotted the special transmission jade slip between him and Mieshi. He froze when he realized Mieshi had been waiting on a reply, and there were already over 10 unread messages. But then he muttered that he nearly tripped while hauling junk, and was still letting his mind wander to someone like Mieshi, questioning how he could even get distracted like that. He figured he should just keep picking things up. Meanwhile, Mieshi grew tense. He noted the jade slip hadn't gotten a response for ages, and now it was even broken, raising the question of whether Tang Siyuan had been discovered. He dismissed that, more worried Tang Siyuan might have been killed, which was a big deal since he was the trump card for tracking leads. He called Tang Siyuan's name to probe. The point was to confirm whether Tang Siyuan was dead, sealed, or compromised. But seeing the astral energy still in motion, Tang Siyuan might have just gotten lucky. Mieshi snapped that the bastard was clearly messing with him, since not only was he alive, but his realm had actually improved. He cursed under his breath. He couldn't believe he'd been waiting around for updates while that hidden person proved impossible to underestimate, especially now that Tang Siyuan had flipped sides. He needed to breathe and get a grip, since everything had veered off course, and none of it lined up with his expectations. Though he claimed none of this was his own intention. It came from the astral insight passed down from that Great One, and if those calculations were off, he figured he'd better go back and ask again to see what key intel might still be buried. He dropped to his knees and began chanting. Energy curled and surged above him. Then, the number 2 appeared. He guessed the Great One might have been going over the heaven-chosen head count again, but it figured even if one of them had died, it still came out to 233, so there wasn't much point in repeating it. Sure enough, the number of heaven-chosen ones came up again. It held steady at 233 for now, so really, the update didn't seem to carry any weight. Then he paused, wondering if Tang Siyuan had somehow been added to the tally. What caught him off guard was the fact that the number hadn't stopped climbing. He started questioning whether the chosen ranks had grown, and just how many more had popped up so fast. Those 234 hadn't shown up overnight. They'd come from countless cycles, through rebirth, reincarnation, and all sorts of strange circumstances. None of them stood out right now, but each of them carried a thread of fate the average person couldn't touch. And the last time the list had changed was a decade ago. It had taken who knows how many eras to scrape together 234 people. But somehow, in just 10 years, the list shot past 300, and worse, it kept rising. By the end of it, Mieshi could only call it a disaster in motion, something way out of balance. He finally got why the Great One had felt the need to repeat the prophecy through the stars. Even a single heaven chosen could flip a continent on its head, so stacking 100,000 into one timeline sounded less like a coincidence and more like a recipe for collapse. Meanwhile, Yifeng had brought up the coming chaos, and Lu Qingshan agreed without hesitation. He worried that the island had too many residents, but Yifeng dismissed it, claiming everything was fine and that the island was a family, so no big conflict would ever break out here. They both decided to wrap things up and head back, with Lu Qingshan giving a nod. Next morning, Yifeng stood in his courtyard, frustrated. He figured his last scolding should have kept them in check a bit, at least motivated them to act like they cared, but no one had even shown their face in a full day, all holed up in the library with nothing but novels and comics. Total disrespect for the fact that he was their master. He turned to Qing Huanxiang and told him to gather the group, and the response came quick. A few minutes later, the disciples assembled. Li Jin figured this was the first time he'd seen his master again in a while. Another thought he finally snagged a front row spot, and one more just wondered what kind of order they were about to get. Yifeng asked if they really thought wasting their time in the library counted for anything, then pointed out how ragged they all looked. One guy had ballooned into a walking embarrassment, and Yifeng asked if maybe he could at least go outside. He threw out that maybe it wasn't the girls outside turning them off, or maybe they were just scared of something. As far as he was concerned, even taking a few steps and finding something pointless to do beat hiding out in the Tibetan scripture pavilion like cowards. Anyone he caught lounging there again just killing time and eating meals could pack up and leave. One of the disciples leaned in, puzzled by the meaning. Another mentioned that their master rarely enforced rules and pressed for the reason behind the sudden shift. A third admitted it rattled him to the core. Su Yunyun stepped forward and remarked that their master had a point. They needed to head out for a stroll, and Li Jin questioned her intention, while Bai Qiu raised the issue of their master's purpose in sending them off. She countered by asking whether their master hadn't plainly stated they were supposed to go seek purpose. She figured their master expected them to leave a mark on the continent and, in time, stamp the whole land beneath their feet. A disciple responded that it checked out, and their master genuinely worked hard for them. Another shared that he'd recently hit a bottleneck and couldn't pinpoint the cause. A third admitted the same and figured it was the right moment to get moving. Another urged the rest to pack up and depart the island without delay. Off to the side, one of the old men warned that the sky over the Xinjiang continent might be about to shift, and the other agreed. The first muttered that he'd better send word to his descendants out there right away, and the second nodded, since if they crossed paths with those people, it could spell disaster. Elsewhere, a disciple asked Su Yunyun about her plans, and she explained that unless she carved out a reputation for herself, she feared their master might never truly acknowledge her. So she figured she'd wander a bit before asking what he planned in turn. He introduced himself as a prince of the Daling Empire in the Void Realm, with no interest in the throne, though for a time he considered claiming it, if only to reach the bare minimum of what it meant to be their master's disciple. Another chimed in that he'd head back to his Void Realm sect for now to serve as sect master, though he wasn't sure when that role might prove helpful to their master. And Su Yunyun remarked that the two junior brothers showed real foresight. A disciple added that he'd heard their master was maneuvering a massive game of chess, so their best bet was to make themselves worthy pieces on the board. One confirmed the sentiment, another followed up with a vow to build a name through personal merit, and someone else backed the idea. They all agreed to stay in touch. Meanwhile, Yifeng declared that he'd finally gotten rid of that group of freeloaders, leaving only himself, Zhongqing, Wu Chang'an, and Yinwu behind, which made things cheaper all around. But the real cause for celebration was that his disciple count had already hit 99, and maybe someone out there, holding a flyer, was even now racing to be the last one. The door to the cultivator's path had creaked open for him. 3 months later, though, the count hadn't budged from 99, and Yifeng reminded himself he wasn't the type to sit around waiting to be discovered. If he headed out, he could at least run into someone decently qualified. The next morning, he made it official that their target was the last disciple, and Skeleton gave his agreement. One of the people brought up whether anyone else had caught that, and someone else confirmed it, swearing the peerless epic-sealed beast Huang Tian had broken loose. Another chipped in that the real shocker wasn't the beast, it was the man and woman who got it to bend the knee, and both of them claimed to be the 6th and 7th disciples of some sect Yifeng wanted to know who the hell they were. He grumbled about being out of the loop for so long, so either their talents were complete garbage, or they were powerful enough to fly under the system's radar, and there wasn't a normal explanation in sight. Out of nowhere, someone called him Mr. Clown and told him to put on a show. He double-checked whether the guy meant him, and when the answer came back affirmative, he fired off a question asking who else was standing around in a crowd of beasts besides him. That's when he clocked the dumb-headed bear, the short black-robed idiot, the centipede permanently glued to the dog's back, and the mutt that was too cheap for its own good. He held back the flood of curses threatening to spill, but only because the guy was a cultivator. So he kept the insults in his head and decided it was time to hunt down that last disciple and speed up this immortality gig. Nobody wants to drag around a crew of morons every day. Then the system chimed in with a congratulations, announcing that his 6th and 7th disciples had finally made a name for themselves across the continent, earning him 2 fate points as a bonus. He wanted to know what kind of name they had made and who the 6th and 7th even were. But then again, that gang of failures probably didn't accomplish anything major. So either word spread that they were begging scraps from some village, or they got into a random scuffle, fluked a win, and picked up a bully's reputation. He turned his attention to the system and asked what a fate point even was. The system let out a low snicker. It explained that fate points could be used to redeem anything from the system store, giving him more freedom to pick whatever he wanted. Yifeng wondered when the bastard system got itself a store and demanded to see it. It had stuff like the devouring mythical beast saliva frog, the beak through the heaven poached chicken, and the heavenly rampage emperor crab. He asked what the hell all of that meant, and insisted on checking the item descriptions. The ancient ferocious beast back at its peak could swallow heaven and earth whole. Yifeng figured that once he started cultivating and had one of those monsters under his command, that there'd be no way he couldn't strut around like a final boss in the cultivation world. He was already laughing like a madman right up until he saw the price. He called it out immediately, yelling about how it cost 100 fate points, and those 2 trash disciples had only earned him 2. He asked what kind of reputation they even made if that's all he got. Right then, something else caught his eye. It was a special category labeled the world's #1 thug, but it wasn't available for exchange. Yifeng noted that the figure looked familiar. Meanwhile, Skeleton kept plucking petals off a flower, flipping between saying he'd never find true love and claiming he totally could. Yifeng couldn't buy it. He already had too many problems on his plate, and now he wondered if the system also forgot to mention that Skeleton was some kind of world's best something. He figured fate points must only come from disciples. Hopefully, one of those trash disciples would eventually go big and bring in hundreds, maybe even thousands of fate points in one go. An evil fish about to chow down on some people took a hit square to the face. It called the whole thing unfair. He ruled the Black River, had immortal level strength, and here he was getting bullied by a regular human. He told his brothers it was time to move. Yifeng snatched up his shoe. He whacked the evil fish crew with it while cussing them out. The evil fish was sure this wasn't how things were supposed to go, especially since he'd only been around for 3 frames. Yifeng scoffed, figuring that maybe cultivators were out of reach for now, but smelly fish were totally fair game. On the other side of the river, a carriage rolled to a halt. Yuanjing remarked that he was ridiculously strong. Her attendant pointed out that those 5 evil fish who had been blocking the river were finally gone, so supply runs could finally happen without a hitch. She agreed, noting that even immortal level beings had hesitated when dealing with those ancient survivors. But the guy finished them off with just his shoe, so she owed him for that. Yifeng spotted her as she stepped down from the carriage. She introduced herself, tossed in some thanks for clearing out the evil, and kept things polite. The system pinged him with the bombshell that her talent ranked deep in the trash tier. He had pegged her for a cultivator, but with that news, she was just a mortal. So he figured the sword she carried was probably for scaring away stray dogs and brushed off the praise by saying he only handled a few fish, so calling him senior felt way too much. Yuanjing pushed back, saying modesty didn't suit him since the 5 fish he had taken out were infamous menaces no one else could handle. So calling him senior wasn't just polite, it was earned. He figured if she could hype up 5 fish like that, then yeah, trash tier fit her just fine. Yifeng and his group decided to tag along with Yuanjing's party for the time being. Yuanjing glanced at the black-robed man and asked who he was, but Yifeng waved it off, calling him dead weight waiting for the end. She nodded, said she had only been wondering if he was as powerful, then pivoted and asked Yifeng if he could share his true strength. He brushed it off, said he was immortal with a few years of martial arts training and a dream to be the kind of martial arts expert kids hear scary bedtime stories about. She held in a laugh, and when he asked what was funny, she denied everything, thinking he clearly didn't want to share and covered it smoothly. Classic high EQ move. A few hours later, the group rolled into Yuan City, one of Wutian Empire's buzzing centers. Yifeng commented on how lively it looked, and Yuanjing replied that it would get even better by nightfall. At Wenxi Lakeside, the place lit up with lanterns every evening. Intellectuals packed the area, and couples treated it like a date spot with a divine blessing. She tossed him an invite. He agreed, thinking she'd footed the bill the whole way. So tagging along for some night market window shopping wasn't a bad trade. Evening came and the sky filled with glowing lanterns. The locals admired the view, taken in by the show above them. Yuanjing nudged him, pointing it out and asking for his thoughts, and he replied that it looked like New Year's Eve on full blast. She called him Brother Yeah, and urged him toward another spot, and he paused at the sudden title shift, but shrugged it off. Still, everyone around him gave off the same read, either garbage tier talent or completely unreadable. Yuanjing pulled at his attention again, noticing he had zoned out. Bai Chiku suddenly called out to her. She asked what he was doing there. He snapped back that she should be the one explaining herself and demanded to know who the man beside her was. She shut him down fast, said Yifeng's identity was none of his business, and told Yifeng they should leave, which he agreed to. But Bai Chiku blocked their path, declaring no one was going anywhere, and she better remember she was engaged to his brother. He warned her that dodging the matter would bring fallout on the entire Yuan family. She snapped at him to shut it. Then she turned to Yifeng, told him not to listen, clarified that the engagement to Bai Yanchun was never real, just a political stunt her family pushed and she never once accepted it. He acknowledged it and said it had nothing to do with him. Bai Chiku sneered, claiming she couldn't wait to cut ties in front of another man, and if she didn't clear it up now, she could forget about walking away. Yifeng stepped in, saying there was a misunderstanding since he had nothing going on with Yuanjing, thinking it would be better to de-escalate, but Bai Chiku barked at him, accused him of playing dumb, and told him to scram. Yifeng pegged him as completely unreasonable and fired back, asking what he'd do if he didn't move. Bai Chiku's face contorted, veins bulging with rage. Yuanjing pleaded with Yifeng to let it go, warning him that while he was strong, Bai Chiku wasn't weak and had all kinds of nasty tricks. But Yifeng checked, asking her if that really counted as strong. He told her to raise her standards. He called himself trash, plain and simple, and pointed out that no one should call someone strong just for waving around a broken sword. Bai Chiku scoffed at the arrogance. Yifeng's eyes sharpened, and he locked on. He channeled force through his leg. Then he launched a kick straight into Bai Chiku's face. The hit split his nose and knocked a tooth clean out. He slammed into the ground, wrecked. Yuanjing kicked herself internally, stunned that she had doubted his strength for even a second, but then admitted she worried the Bai family wouldn't let this slide. He told her to let them come, that their precious young master was just trash too, and if that was their best, then the Bai family probably wasn't much stronger. She had no words. Then she flashed a heart with her fingers. The next day, at Yuanjing's private residence, the sun spilled over the courtyard like someone had turned up the brightness settings for no reason. Yifeng drifted off with a scowl, and Yuanjing stared after him, looking like she couldn't tell if he was annoyed or constipated. She figured he liked pretending he didn't care about the Bai family, but really, he was gnawing on the worry inside like it owed him money. Inside the room, Yifeng barked about still not knowing when his final precious disciple would show up, since half a month had already crawled by. Also, 4 whole gold coins had vanished into the ether. A little while later, the only thing he uncovered was a sad pile of books labeled Tai Chi and Dream of the Red Chamber. He didn't dig up what he wanted, just a mountain of old junk, leftover sale books, and stuff no one missed anymore. He swung the door open, muttered about taking a break, and dumped the cleanup duty on her. And Yuanjing just nodded, like that was the most normal thing ever. She balanced the whole leaning tower of books in her arms and let out a low sigh. Her gaze drifted upward to the rooftop, where Skullgrate's crew was already buzzing over streaks cutting across the sky. Women were literally flying through the air. He stared at them, hearts practically floating around his head, and Yuanjing cracked up at the look on his face. She figured, without saying anything, that this whole thing, someone getting cooler in your eyes because they could fly, had hit her too, once, back when she couldn't even get off the ground. She told Skullgrate not to stress and said she had faith his dream would take off someday. And he asked whether that could really happen, and she answered without blinking. She figured, deep down, that even if that tiny body looked like it had zero talent for cultivation, the chance still mattered. Later, Yuanjing exhaled again and decided it'd be a waste to chuck Yifeng's book, so she shoved it onto her shelf for now. Meanwhile, back at the Yuan family estate, Yuan Longtian, the family's patriarch, thundered out a demand about whether Yuanjing really dragged someone over to smack Bai Chiku around. He called it wild arrogance and told the servants to drag her back instantly. The servant explained he'd already tried, but she wouldn't come, saying she had company and couldn't make it, which made Yuan Longtian snap about what guests could possibly matter more than this. The servant said he looked into it and found out the guest might be that expert the young miss met during a supply run, the one who wiped out 5 evil fish in the Black River and also roughed up young Master Bai. Yuan Longtian dismissed it as complete nonsense, figuring even someone powerful wouldn't mess with the Bai family, and quietly admitted that without them, the Yuan family would have been toast long ago. Messing with the Bai family's second son wasn't just some accident, so he ordered things to be packed and prepared to go to the Bai family immediately, and the servant gave a sharp nod. But then Bai Lingtian showed up and casually mentioned there was no need, since he'd already come in person. He brought his bodyguard Shadow with him, and Yuan Longtian greeted them both, stiff and cautious. Bai Lingtian said they'd head to Yuanjing's place together and meet the person everyone kept talking about. Yuan Longtian tried to deflect, saying the guy didn't deserve that kind of attention, and offered to bring him over instead. Bai Lingtian mentioned the trip was mostly to see Yuanjing and discuss her marriage with Bai Yanchun, so Yuan Longtian gave a polite nod and quietly figured it was a relief that no one seemed to be throwing blame over Bai Chiku getting injured because of Yuanjing. Yuanjing had a rare physique that didn't help her own cultivation much, but Bai Yanchun was practicing a method that thrived on that exact trait, and the gains from dual cultivation would be massive for him, which made perfect sense, considering Bai Yanchun was tapped as the Bai family's future head, and why Bai Lingtian was treating it like a big deal. They didn't waste time getting to Yuanjing's gate. Skullgreat's crew clocked them pretty fast. The gate opened, and Skullgreat and his companion stood quietly watching them come in. Bai Lingtian asked whether Skullgreat was the one who hurt Bai Chiku, and Yuan Longtian clarified that he wasn't. The black-robed guy was just a subordinate, and the black bear and dog tagging along were just pets, and based on solid info, none of the three had much in the way of real power. Bai Lingtian shrugged that if that was true then they weren't worth his time, and told Shadow to handle it, which Shadow acknowledged without fuss. Skullgreat didn't budge as Bai Lingtian walked past him. Shadow stepped up, tossing a jab about Skullgreat acting important with that stiff posture, and adding that at least he didn't clog his lord's time with pointless chatter. But that attitude alone had already rubbed his lord the wrong way. Since he'd been by his lord's side for centuries, he figured Skullgreat needed a reality check. Meanwhile, the 2 old men stepped into the open courtyard. Bai Lingtian told someone to fetch Yifeng so he could speak to Yuanjing about the marriage proposal, and Yuan Longtian agreed without comment. Bai Lingtian quietly weighed that Bai Yanchun's talent was immense, with the kind of foresight that could take the Bai family to new heights, and because of that, a choice had already been made. He'd drop his identity as the Bai patriarch for this, and talk about marriage like the younger ones. And even if he had to give a little ground, it didn't really matter. Then he noticed a book sitting on a table and gave it a quick glance. Something about it made him pause, because it wasn't what he expected, and he reached for the book marked Tai Chi. The thing carried an impossible to pin down energy, which made him wonder if this was the book left by that legendary senior, since it matched the one he'd seen before. At that moment, Yuanjing stood in the doorway, caught off guard. She recognized Bai Lingtian, and quietly registered that he had shown up himself. Even though the whole marriage issue and Yifeng injuring Bai Chiku were huge headaches, they were bound to come crashing in eventually, and she had no choice but to deal with it. There was no way she'd agree to the marriage, and Yifeng's mess was hers to clean up. Just then, Bai Lingtian caught her expression as she greeted him, and paused with a flicker of surprise. He asked to check something with her, and she gave a quiet nod. He rushed to know where the Tai Chi book had come from, and she looked at it and responded with uncertainty. Yuanjing raised whether there was something off with the book, and Bai Lingtian demanded to know where it had come from. She pointed out that the book belonged to Yifeng. Bai Lingtian echoed the name and pushed to confirm whether he was the one who injured Bai Chiku, and she nodded. He immediately released her. Yuanjing urged them to let her explain and brought up that Bai Chiku had provoked Yifeng first, so the kid had no option but to retaliate. Bai Lingtian stared with a tightened expression. Yuanjing figured the situation had officially gone from bad to worse. Afterward, Yuan Langtian flicked a look to the side, one eyebrow arched. He waved off Bai Lingtian's concern, mentioning the kid was curled up in his room and wouldn't budge no matter how loud anyone got, so he'd just bust in and drag him out himself. He channeled his aura and pressed a hand on the door. Bai Lingtian's palm cracked into his face without warning. Yuan Jing froze, visibly jolted. Yuan Langtian demanded to know what that was for. Bai Lingtian ignored him and introduced himself as one of the Bai clan from Yuan City, here specifically to greet the senior. He hadn't known the senior would be in Yuan City and admitted that ignorance alone made him unworthy to live, while Yuan Langtian silently questioned why he even came if not to get answers about the incident. He wrestled with how someone could keep looking respectful and even say he should die, despite the fact his own son had taken a hit. Meanwhile, Yi Feng's snores came through and Yuan Langtian checked if that was really snoring. Bai Lingtian confirmed it and added that since the senior was resting, he wouldn't disturb him for now. Later, Yuan Langtian asked what that was supposed to mean and who exactly the kid even was. Bai Lingtian asked whether they remembered what Wu Tian once shared about his experience. Wu Tian, the chosen of the Wu Tian Empire, stood as its supreme ruler and in his 20s already reigned as monarch and top expert of the empire. Back when the Void Realm and the Xinjiang continent hadn't yet connected, he accidentally stumbled into Xinjiang during his teenage years due to spatial turbulence. Bai Lingtian clarified that at the time he'd believed returning home was impossible, but in a small city he'd met a senior. That senior had cleared away many of his doubts and helped shatter the limits of his cultivation, and thanks to that, he gained the strength to rip through space and return to the Void Realm even before the two realms were linked. Every bit of success he achieved stemmed not just from his own effort, but also the guidance of that senior, who gifted him a copy of the supreme divine skill before parting ways. Yuan Langtian added that Wu Tian had always carried one regret, because he'd been too young to remember the name of the city and never managed to find or thank the senior again. That was why Lord Wu Tian ordered them to show respect to anyone remotely similar to that senior and notify him immediately. And Bai Lingtian agreed that clearly those words had never left his mind. Yuan Jing, still quiet, admitted she never expected their empire's lord to have such a story, and couldn't help but wonder who that senior really was to shape someone like Wu Tian. Yuan Langtian turned back to question what any of that had to do with the kid named Yi, and Bai Lingtian shut him down and told him to come along. Later, they stepped into a different room. Yuan Langtian wanted to know what book they were talking about, and Bai Lingtian told him to take a proper look. Yuan Langtian focused on the cover labeled Tai Chi and didn't say anything. He suddenly burst out that it was unreal and demanded if this was actually the book of Wu Tian's divine skill. Bai Lingtian mentioned that Wu Tian treated that book like his most prized possession, keeping it close, and clarified it wasn't Wu Tian's personal copy, just exactly the same kind. Yuan Langtian brought up who the actual owner was, and Yuan Jing explained Yi Feng had given it to her. Yuan Langtian pieced it together and remarked that Yi Feng must have been like Wu Tian, favored by that same senior. He ran through the idea that Yi Feng's power and position might not fall short, then got uneasy about how pushy he had been earlier, but Bai Lingtian brushed that off. Yuan Langtian looked visibly relieved and admitted that messing with someone on that level would have spelled trouble. Then Bai Lingtian added that Yi Feng might actually be the senior himself. Yuan Langtian froze mid-thought. Then he just froze completely and stumbled out that he was the senior. He followed up by checking if Yi Feng really was that senior, and Bai Lingtian brought up something Wu Tian had once mentioned. The senior's surname turned out to be Yi. The father and daughter just stood there, stunned and slack-jawed. Yuan Jing mulled over whether the Yi Feng she had spent all that time with had actually been the one who trained Wu Tian, and the idea left her reeling. Yuan Langtian checked again whether she really got the book from him, and she confirmed it, adding that he told her to toss it like trash. Yuan Langtian couldn't wrap his head around why it would be trash, and Bai Lingtian assured him there was no mistake. Back then, Wu Tian explained that the senior always hid his nature, appearing no different from an ordinary person. So anything others called divine or sacred just seemed mundane to him. Back then, Wu Tian explained that the senior always hid his nature, appearing no different from an ordinary person. So anything others called divine or sacred just seemed mundane to him, like using a sacred treasure as toilet paper or wiping his clothes with an artifact. He let out a heavy sigh, full of weight. He honestly wanted to see that senior one more time. Eventually, they all clued in that only someone like that would chuck the Tai Chi divine skill book as if it were garbage. Yuan Langtian burst out that he had to go save him, and Bai Lingtian let out a quiet sigh. He made it clear that unless the monarch personally gave mercy, there was no saving anyone. and Yuan Langtian admitted the blame rested on him. Bai Lingtian owned up to starting the mess, but warned that dragging him in now would cost both the Yuan and Bai families their backbone, and he pointed out how bleak the future would look. Yuan Langtian replied that another family would take their place and they'd vanish eventually. Bai Lingtian acknowledged he was right, pulled himself together, and pledged to support the family if he died, which Yuan Langtian accepted. Bai Lingtian said he would report to the monarch himself, told him to go home, explain everything, and await punishment, and mentioned that he would send the shadow to help out if things got tough, while Yuan Langtian and Yuan Jing held each other in a wordless goodbye. But then Bai Lingtian paused, and Yuan Langtian questioned where the shadow even was. That dinner party popped into their heads again, when Wu Tian mentioned that aside from the senior, there was his elder brother, shorter in height, serving under the senior. The elder brother always wore some goofy black robe, ranked second only to the senior in strength, and didn't even measure up to a single finger of his. He also mentioned not to cut the music or stop the dancing, since his elder brother enjoyed women, wine, music, and wild nights. His first time had apparently been when the elder brother stole 30 gold coins from the senior and took him to the Red Chamber, and even though he didn't know anything back then, he said he'd never felt happier. Both men paled, stuck in complete silence. Yuan Jing asked what was wrong as they bolted through the doors. They sprinted fast, but not fast enough. Skull Great smashed him into the air and they jerked in stunned alarm. Shadow crashed into the ground with blood dripping from his mouth and his wig knocked loose. Bai Lingtian replayed the moment the monarch dubbed him the most handsome man alive, Skull Great, like it got carved into imperial law and nobody even blinked. They'd hit the mark, and Shadow got pancaked by a single finger while Yuan Jing tossed out whether this was the same reject Yi Feng once painted as cultivation roadkill. She honestly couldn't process the fact that she'd been rooting for him barely a minute earlier. Skull Great threw out the insult bat, calling him garbage and mocking him for mouthing off in front of someone lethal, practically signing his own death slip. Then came the laid-back threat, asking if the other two wanted to take a swing, and they shut that down hard with a nope-laced terror. Yuan Jing's knees were already halfway collapsed, creaking under the pressure. Skull Great waved it off, throwing her a beauty-stamped nickname like it was a sweet note instead of a warning. He told her not to worry, since the trash guy had decent taste in pretty things, which left Yuan Jing too scrambled to spit anything back. Then Yi Feng cut across the scene, calling him out for bothering girls again, and Skull Great yelped so sharp it cracked the mood. Yi Feng followed it up with a half-asleep grumble about the noise, while Skull Great scrambled into apology mode, leaving the rest frozen mid-blink. Bai Lingtian watched Skull Great faceplant and mentally ticked the box that this nonsense really happened, while Yuan Langtian dropped a line about whether that senior just stepped up. The guy looked crisp, moved like a stage actor, and gave off zero aura, lining up perfectly with Wu Tian's mystery mentor checklist. Everyone slipped into the senior greeting on cue, and Yi Feng tossed it back with a who even are you attitude until they dropped their names. He clocked the Bai family mention and pegged them as here to stir the pot after their kid took a beating. They fumbled through denials before he laid it bare, dragging them for crawling back after catching hands and now begging not to get stomped at again. They went silent, brains overheating as he read the room like a scroll wide open. Yi Feng told them to spill and poked at whether the Bai family was even that scary, considering they just got bodied by someone who barely moved. They looped the same tune again, saying they didn't dare, while secretly sweating over the fact that nobody in the Empire could touch the so-called trash they just ran into. Bai Lingtian owned the guilt, but tossed out a plea for mercy in Wu Tian's name, which got Yi Feng tilting his head like he'd never heard it before. They barely resisted screaming, convinced there was no way he didn't know. Not with the guy ticking every Wu Tian legend box they had. Yuan Langtian tried a speedrun of similar names to jog him, and Yi Feng guessed Ku Wu, veering way off. He eventually got tired of the act and told them to quit stalling and say what they wanted, so Bai Lingtian mentioned some top-tier immortal weapon with zero extra info. His deadpan face held steady while Yuan Langtian suddenly exploded with confirmation like he just hit the jackpot. He whipped out a framed portrait, and Yi Feng finally turned his head. Yuan Langtian held it up with pride, claiming the face belonged to Lord Wu Tian. Yi Feng dropped the "you should have led with that" line, and Yuan Langtian poked the mood by asking if it jogged anything. Yi Feng admitted the guy had once wandered into his martial arts gym during a rough patch with nowhere else to crash, but compared to Zhongxing, the dude had no edge and no right to even be training. He hadn't even been funny bad, just straight up useless, especially with how slow he caught on to Monkey Steals the Peach, which knocked the elder sideways. Yifeng mentioned he used to call him Zhao Jier, little chick, and the two swallowed the jab with the silent promise they'd hatch into eggs if that's what it took to keep things cool. Yifeng pressed for their actual role, and the two confirmed they were Wu Tian's subordinates. Yifeng quietly figured that while Wu Tian had no real talent, the guy had a steady heart, and if fortune tilted his way, maybe he could have carved out a name. But now he was stuck piecing together scraps of legacy. With subordinates like that, the little chick was floundering, and Yifeng figured he had too many eggs peeping at his heels. Yifeng then said that since they were standing in Wu Tian's hometown, he ought to host him properly and told the two to go tell him, which they agreed to without blinking. As they walked out, Yifeng and Yuanjing stuck around. He threw out an invite to hang out once the little chick landed, and she tossed it back with a quick check on whether he actually meant her. She quietly mulled over the odds of actually tagging along with a monarch who barely showed up on most people's radar and figured it might be out of her league entirely. She nudged the idea by asking if it was really fine and whether Wu Tian would cause trouble, and Yifeng waved it off, claiming he'd smash him flat if he tried, since she'd already invited him plenty. It felt unreal, like she'd wandered into someone else's story. Not just walking beside peerless monsters, but having Wu Tian himself show up on her path. Still, she wasn't the type the monarch would normally notice. The guy who dismissed even monarchs as nobodies had already made the gap between them clear. She figured Yifeng probably just saw her as a cheerful junior who happened to amuse him. Later, Bai Lingtian made it back to the Bai family. He stepped inside and got greeted right away by Bai Yanchun. Bai Chiku stood nearby too. Chiku immediately jumped in, checking if his father had helped nab that scumbag he hated, planning to wreck his limbs and strip his cultivation just to calm himself down. Bai Lingtian shut him down with a slap across the face. Bai Chiku toppled back. He demanded to know what that was for. Lingtian snapped that if he even tried to ask, he'd beat him dead, so Bai Chiku called out to his brother for help. Bai Yanchun answered by slamming a kick into his side. He tossed out a cold judgment that garbage was still garbage, claimed Chiku couldn't even spot what mattered to the clan, and declared that the Bai family would only rise after he married Yuanjing. Then he switched gears and asked his father about how the marriage talks went that day. Bai Lingtian slapped him too and told him to shut his filthy mouth, which got him asking why. Bai Chiku cracked up from the floor while Bai Yanchun went flying. Bai Lingtian cut them off and warned not to dream about Yuanjing unless he was ready to die, then ordered him to pack up and head for the imperial city on the spot. Later, a flag shot into the sky. Bodies littered the field while victors loomed over the wall. Wu Tian, monarch of the Wu Tian Empire, locked eyes and checked if he'd heard right, if they'd actually found his senior and brother. Bai Lingtian confirmed, saying both were sitting tight in Yuan City. Wu Tian broke down and muttered that he'd finally found them at last. He checked whether they knew about him, and Bai Lingtian nodded, adding that the senior had personally sent him. The senior laid it out that since he'd reached the monarch's territory, the monarch ought to step up and host properly. Wu Tian took the hint and grinned that the senior clearly saw him as one of their own. He turned to the crowd and barked out commands to follow him to meet the senior, and tacked on orders to gather all the Empire's Sect saintesses and send them over, which got the usual round of obedience. Then he brought up his minister's daughter, mentioned how gorgeous she was, and told him to bring her too, but the minister begged him to leave her out of it. Wu Tian reminded him this was a gift, but if he didn't want it, then he'd better say goodbye to what made him a man. He capped it with one last warning. If it weren't for his senior and elder brother, he'd be nothing, and neither would the Woodian Empire. Everyone had to obey the two without question, and anyone who disrespected them would be wiped out, which got a round of panicked nods. He ordered everyone to come along to meet the senior. Right then, the minister stepped forward and begged Wu Tian to think again. He got that the excitement was real, but reminded him they were still neck-deep in war with the Tianyu Empire, and wondered what they'd do about the battlefield now. Wu Tian waved it off and said to just hand the city over since he didn't want it anymore, and the minister blinked in stunned silence. Wu Tian brushed it off, figuring if the opportunity slipped by, then so be it. Not a big deal. Nothing topped meeting the senior and his elder brother right now, and if it made his elder brother smile, then that sealed it as worthwhile. His elder brother would swing by when he had a moment, and the place would get locked down on the spot. Later on, Wu Tian showed up in Yuan City. They headed toward the Yuan residence together. Bai Yanchun checked with his father about whether the senior really stayed there, and Bai Lingtian confirmed it without hesitation. He figured that smack earlier from his father actually tracked. just a solid reminder to ditch any ideas about Yuan Jing. Out of nowhere, Wu Tian dropped to his knees, calling out loud for them. He hollered that he'd come just to meet them. Yi Feng recognized him right away, throwing out a comment that little Chick had grown up. Wu Tian greeted his senior and elder brother, and Yi Feng remarked it had been years since they last crossed paths. Yi Feng flashed back to when the skeleton had just escaped the system, Zhong Qing and Wang Kai were missing in action. Skull Great had asked if Wu Tian had a girlfriend yet, and he'd just made an offhand comment about how fast time goes. Bai Yanchun couldn't believe the young guy was actually a senior, and Bai Lingxian just tossed out the classic reminder that you can't judge a book by its cover. Yuan Jing pointed out the monarch was legit kneeling right there, and it already had her on edge. Yi Feng observed the crowd was stacked deep, and Wu Tian looked thrown. He figured Senior, not being worldly, probably had no idea what he'd done lately, and the people with him were all top-tier loyal soldiers who'd survived countless battles by his side, so he brought them to show off. He asked what Senior thought of the crew, and Yi Feng countered by checking if he really wanted the truth. Wu Tian confirmed it without flinching. Yi Feng hit him with the verdict that they were absolute garbage. Wu Tian and the group stared, clearly not ready for that one. He realized these people meant nothing in Yi Feng's eyes, so he suggested they go somewhere private, and mentioned that a banquet was set where he planned to raise a toast, and Yi Feng shrugged and went with it. Later they arrived at a tall red building. Yuan Jing commented that this was her first time in a place like that, and Wu Tian waved them in. A woman stepped out. Several women danced while music kicked in. Yi Feng immediately questioned the song choice, and Wu Tian laughed, reminded him he was the one who taught it, and mentioned it had become the national anthem. He added that none of it really mattered, and told them to keep their eyes on the stage. 3 women stood there, cheeks flushed. Skull Great practically exploded with joy, eyes turning into hearts. Yuan Jing blinked in confusion and quietly decided these people were absolutely unhinged. They were saintesses from all the big sects, and she noticed some aristocrats scattered among the crowd too. Those folks had her beat in status and looks, and while Wu Tian encouraged them to pick one, Yuan Jing quietly sobbed, thinking Big Brother Yi was far beyond her reach. Everyone took seats in 2 tidy rows, each table covered in plates and cups. Wu Tian figured his elite crew just got trashed by the senior, but figured the mood would shift once he mentioned he was now the monarch of the Wu Tian Empire. He started explaining who he'd become, but Yi Feng cut him off, claiming he already knew the full story. Wu Tian pushed back, asking if he really did, and Yi Feng answered without skipping a beat. Yi Feng glanced at him once and knew what he was about, pegging him immediately as a bandit and a pimp. Every vicious-looking guy around them screamed bandit, and he remembered being told to take his pick from the girls, since they were all his now. Wu Tian checked if the little chick hadn't let him down. Yi Feng answered that he was massively let down. Yuan Jing froze in place, cold sweat on her face. Wu Tian stood there, stunned, and asked what made him say that. Yi Feng explained that this wasn't the right path, and Wu Tian echoed his words, caught off guard, realizing the senior didn't see being a monarch as anything worth praising. Yi Feng reminded him he had already passed this lesson along before, since a person needed ambition sharp enough to reach past the horizon. Yi Feng pointed out that things might look flashy and fun, but reality couldn't be ignored, and nudged him to reflect on that. Wu Tian staggered a little and let the words echo in his mind, ambition and the horizon. Wu Tian lifted his gaze and mentioned that he remembered. Since taking the throne, he had lost track of why he even fought in the first place, wasting days on pride and treating governance and warfare like a game. The senior had it right, so he began questioning what the point of being a monarch even was, wondering how ambition could settle for a tiny empire when they were meant to be shaping the whole world. Suddenly, Yi Feng stiffened with surprise while holding a cup. Wu Tian dropped into a full bow on the floor and called out that he understood. Once the food and wine ran dry, Wu Tian took his leave, feeling too small to stick around Yi Feng now that he realized being a monarch wasn't enough to stand at his side. But just before he walked away, Yi Feng accepted him as a disciple. Even though Yi Feng had once considered taking Wu Tian in, he'd passed him over for having talent not even worth calling average. That new acknowledgement sent a rush through Wu Tian's chest as he silently promised to carve out a name for himself and earn the right to meet Yi Feng again. All of that came second though, because in his hands he now held a book stamped with the technique title Duan Quan. The Yunding Empire stood tagged as the actual heavyweight of the Void Realm. It held top-tier strength across the realm, and every other empire operated more like its glorified side branches. He ruled as the monarch of the Yunding Empire and nudged Mieshi to go check out the next task. Mieshi dropped onto the ground right next to him. He scanned the path ahead with a focused look. Mieshi reported that the Immortal Pillar of Destiny had made solid progress thanks to all their non-stop effort, and that pulling everyone out of the Chaos Palace for this hadn't been a waste. Destiny relayed that Wu Tian, the Wu Tian Empire's monarch, carried a massive destiny signature, and the next move was to bring him under their influence. The Yunding monarch let out a laugh and remarked that even heaven seemed to be offering support, and when Mieshi followed up, he clarified that the Wu Tian Empire had been their vassal since the old days. Pulling Wu Tian over only required sending an imperial edict. Mieshi urged him to hurry and send the order to Wu Tian, and mentioned that once they had him under control, the Pillar of Destiny would spike in power. Once the Immortal Pillar of Destiny reached its peak, it would signal that his lord had drained every ounce of destiny from the Xianzhang continent, making any ripple in the Xianzhang Primal Chaos Monument completely irrelevant. They both broke into loud laughter. The scene cut over to the Wu Tian Empire. 4 women greeted Wu Tian, and he noted that since they were involved with his elder brother, they counted as his brother's women and didn't need to treat him with formality since he didn't consider himself worthy of that. Wu Tian explained that his elder brother, Skullgreat, had given each of them a bone fragment the size of dust as a gift and told them to take it and refine it properly. He reminded them to refine it well and added that if they pulled it off, they'd gain the Supreme Bone and unlock major potential, which prompted their thanks. The minister muttered with regret that if he'd known about the Supreme Bone, he would have sent his daughter earlier. Wu Tian steered his focus beyond the horizon. He aimed to be more ambitious, to push for the title of First Under Heaven. He voiced that ambition directly, wanting to top the entire Void Realm, and dismissed the worth of the small Wu Tian Empire. He had no interest in staying monarch of the empire any longer. His subordinates all froze with disbelief, eyes wide as they reeled from what he'd just declared. The minister pleaded for him to reconsider, and Wu Tian brushed it off with a casual reply which only deepened the minister's shock. Wu Tian mentioned that it wouldn't sit right to just walk away with nothing, so he planned to crush the Tianyu Empire first, and only then would the Wu Tian Empire become untouchable enough for him to retire in peace. He told them not to trouble their senior over such a minor issue, and instead suggested reaching out to the elder brother. He reflected on the fact that swapping contact details earlier had been smart, while Skullgreat teased whether he'd used a QR code for it. Skullgreat picked up immediately and prompted him for the reason, and Wu Tian responded that the little chick needed a hand. He mentioned that little chick hoped to invite him over to fart. He had his eyes on a city he wanted to seize, so Skullgreat scoffed that now it made sense why the master thought he lacked ambition. Skullgreat asked if he was really getting roped into something so petty, then waved it off and agreed to help this time, telling him to hang tight since it would be wrapped up fast. Wu Tian's token beeped as the connection cut off. He figured that he could finally step back soon. Out of nowhere, a massive boom rang out, catching everyone off guard. Someone threw out a guess about what caused the sound, while another wondered if it was an earthquake. A soldier rushed over, shouting a report. A gigantic figure appeared high in the sky, and the entire Tianyu Empire's army got flattened the moment it took its seat, sparking shocked cries from everyone who heard. Wu Tian raised a hand to indicate that everything was fine. Elsewhere, 2 envoys from the Yunding Empire stood in front of a building, drawing stares from the guards. One mentioned that they had finally made it, and the other noted that Wu Tian wouldn't dare ignore an imperial edict. He questioned whether Wu Tian would actually follow the command, and the other responded that he definitely would. Any monarch from a vassal state got branded with the vassal imprint as soon as they stepped into power, and anyone who resisted the Yunding monarch would drop dead instantly. This method would give the Immortal Pillar of Destiny a hefty boost, and the other added that unless Wu Tian died or gave up the throne, resistance was impossible. Then, a passerby casually mentioned hearing that Wu Tian had already abdicated, which made both envoys freeze with visible alarm. Back at the Yunding Empire, Mieshi waited for updates. He said that if his guess was right, the envoys should have already reached the Wu Tian Empire, and the Yunding monarch added that the edict probably got there without a hitch. A beeping noise cut through the air, and the Yunding monarch pointed out that they just received a message, while Mieshi noted how fast that had been. Then both of them jolted, voices rising as they processed the news that Wu Tian had abdicated. The Yunding monarch kept tossing out questions about what was happening, pointed out how the Wu Tian Empire used to be a messy little place and Wu Tian hadn't even ruled that long, then brought up the weird part. Why drop the throne out of nowhere? Mishi tossed in a jab about Wu Tian striking gold only to throw it all away, threw around the idea that maybe the guy had lost it, and the Yunding monarch brushed it off without blinking. If Wu Tian wanted out, fine, no one was stopping him. But as long as he still belonged to the Wu Tian Empire, he remained under the Yunding monarch's thumb. And that meant the imperial edict still stood, imprint or not, and ignoring it was still a death sentence. If he refused to follow through, even if he vanished off the map, the Yunding Empire would still track him down and end him, which one envoy calmly echoed as what the monarch had laid out, while the other shrugged and said to just follow through and be done with it. Later on, they stepped into the Wu Tian Empire's Imperial Palace Grand Hall. Wu Tian quietly buried his irritation toward the envoy from the Yunding Empire, while staying put in the palace to manage what was left. Normally, no one cared when vassal states were drowning in chaos and blood, but once they scraped together any wealth, tribute came calling, and the envoy made it clear they were here with orders straight from the Yunding monarch. Because Wu Tian had pulled off major feats, bringing together the Wu Tian Empire through sharp thinking and guts, the edict announced he'd be going on a pilgrimage to meet the saint. That part was written in the formal imperial edict, but there was also a spoken order from the Yunding monarch, and Wu Tian motioned for him to get on with it. The envoy explained that the Yunding monarch admired Wu Tian, and the real reason behind the pilgrimage was to crown him king of the Yunding Empire. Wu Tian wasn't thrilled by the sound of it and mulled over the meaning behind the offer. The envoy confirmed that king really meant king, and explained that since the founding of the Yunding Empire, only 2 people had been granted that title, and both had been the top monarchs in their own empires. Technically, it wasn't even Wu Tian's turn, but the edict made it clear His Majesty held him in high regard. The envoy then raised his voice, demanding to know why Wu Tian wasn't on his knees, thanking His Majesty for such a favor. He also wanted to know why Wu Tian kept shaking his head. Wu Tian threw it back by saying they were late to the party, pointing out that he wasn't a monarch anymore, and recalled that one had to be a monarch to even qualify for king status in Yunding. The second envoy cut in, saying there was no need to drag it out, since the Yunding monarch already knew the truth, and frankly, didn't care, because talent was what mattered now. Wu Tian couldn't shake the sense that something was off, because based on what he'd actually done during his reign, there wasn't enough there to warrant praise from someone like the Yunding monarch. He figured the whole king offer was bait to tighten control over vassal empires, and that if he wasn't even a monarch anymore, there was no strategic value in him getting that title. So the Yunding monarch clearly had other plans. Wu Tian declared he wasn't interested in being a monarch or a king, gave credit to the Yunding monarch's gesture, and told them to take their message and leave. The envoy cut in again, questioning whether Wu Tian even knew what he was saying, or if he realized what kind of line he was about to cross by rejecting the edict. Wu Tian countered by asking what if he did. The envoy then spelled out the cost, warning that if Wu Tian defied the Yunding monarch's will, he'd lose both body and soul. Not just him, but the whole Wu Tian empire would be wrecked beyond repair. Wu Tian couldn't ignore the image of all those innocent people getting dragged into this, muttered a curse under his breath, sweat slipping down his face, and requested time to think it over. Even after stepping down, he couldn't drag civilians into the fire, and he wondered what move to make next, then figured it was time to ask the senior for advice. The call cut in out of nowhere, and Feng immediately exploded about Skullgreat stealing 4 gold coins and swore he'd rip him apart. Feng's tone shifted when he realized the call was real, asked what was happening, and Wu Tian told him there were major choices to make, and he needed direction. Feng reminded him that he had already gone over this before, pushed him to stay bold, and told him to go for it without looking back. He then made it clear he was busy and wouldn't say more before cutting the call, while Wu Tian quietly repeated the line about not being afraid and going for it, realizing the words suddenly hit different. Feng had hammered that ambition thing into him over and over before, and now it hit him that maybe the bar he was meant to reach went way past the Yunding monarch's vision. He sucked in a breath and came to grips with the idea that Feng had set the bar that high for him all along. The envoy pressed him on whether he had figured it out, and the other reminded him that if he understood, he ought to behave and follow them back without fuss. Wu Tian kept his mouth shut. The envoy's brows lifted, and the other demanded to know what he was playing at. Wu Tian declared he was going to kill them. The envoy challenged if he dared, and the other announced they were envoys of the Yunding Empire, asking if he wanted to die. So Wu Tian told them to watch and find out. He added that he would not only kill them but also march into the imperial palace of the Yunding Empire and take their monarch's life. A minister asked the Lord Monarch if he was acting rashly. Another remarked that there was something strange in the Yunding Empire's behavior, and another insisted the Yunding Empire would never let them off, so Wu Tian demanded to know what they feared. He accused them of being small-minded, and a minister repeated the word with a frown, pressing him for its meaning. Wu Tian answered that he planned to take down the Yunding Empire and crown himself monarch of the Void Realm, which drew stunned reactions from the ministers. One minister argued they were nowhere near the Yunding Empire's level. Another wondered if he had drunk too much, and another claimed he must be suffering from anemia after eating stale food. Wu Tian waved off their doubts and explained his choice came from Senior's directive. He reminded them that even if they crossed the Yunding Empire, Senior and his elder brother would defend them, which made the ministers blink in surprise. Wu Tian continued that Senior had just sent word to face matters head-on and get them done. Ever since they had crushed the troublemaking Feng Empire in a single strike, backed by those heavyweights, Yi Feng and the Skull Great had been treated as divine. One minister sided with the Lord Monarch and cursed the Yunding Empire. Another declared his support, and another urged they send troops immediately, volunteering to lead, which made Wu Tian laugh and commend them. He asked what difference it made if he killed 2 envoys, prompting one minister to praise him and another to lament that only 2 had come, or else he would have claimed to kill himself. A minister mentioned he had an idea, and Wu Tian told him to share it. The minister proposed sending the 2 corpses straight back and hanging them on the gate tower of Yunding's imperial palace, claiming it would be the clearest way to declare war. Wu Tian called it an excellent idea and admitted that without Senior's guidance, he would never have dared provoke the Yunding Empire. But now that he had taken this decisive step, he was certain Senior would be pleased. Meanwhile, in the Yunding Empire, all remained quiet. Mieshi remarked it had been 2 days with no news and wondered if something had gone wrong, but the Yunding monarch dismissed his concern. He reminded him the Yunding Empire stood as the Void Realm's supreme power, untouchable and even protected, because if one of their envoys died, no one could bear the consequences. Mieshi acknowledged that as reassuring. A soldier then rushed in to report 2 body bags hanging on the gate tower of the imperial city, prompting the Yunding monarch to demand an explanation. Later, as he stood before the corpses of his envoys, he demanded to know who had such gall. A soldier asked forgiveness, claiming ignorance, and the Yunding monarch ordered the bags brought forward so he could see their contents. The sight inside was unfit for children, and one soldier muttered about the savagery, while another admitted he could not stomach the view. The Yunding monarch recognized it as a provocation, a blatant one. He commanded that by day's end he wanted the names of both victims and the culprit, and the soldier answered with firm obedience. Mieshi remarked there was no reason to get riled up over such matters, and told them to let his subordinates deal with it, since the immortal pillar of destiny was what mattered most. And the Yunding monarch agreed this was correct, and said now was not the time to get sidetracked. Later, a soldier reported to Lord Monarch that the identities of the 2 people had been uncovered. The Yunding monarch dismissed it as a trivial matter, unworthy of his attention, and told him to inform the prime minister instead. But the soldier insisted the identities of those 2 were anything but trivial. The Yunding monarch told him to speak, since he was already here. The soldier revealed they were the 2 envoys the Lord Monarch himself had sent to the Wu Tian Empire. The Yunding monarch jolted in shock, and Mieshi lifted his brows in surprise. He demanded to know if the soldier was mistaken, but the soldier swore they were truly the envoys and urged him to calm down, after which the Yunding monarch roared to know why it had not been said sooner and barked for the soldier to die. Mieshi suddenly caught a buzzing sound and announced that the destiny pillar was waning. He stated something had clearly happened in the Wutian Empire, and the pillar's decline proved it. But the Yunding monarch told him not to be hasty, as such incidents were normal when Wutian was just a small-time figure. He added that even if Wu Tian stood as an enemy, the pillar should not shrink too much, and Mieshi replied they would have to hope so. The Yunding monarch then exclaimed that 1/3 of it was gone, and Mieshi noted the drop was massive. He said the loss of destiny was already hard to recover thanks to that beast Huang Tian, and now it had returned to its weakened state, and the Yunding monarch cursed. Another soldier burst in with news that the Wu Tian Empire had launched an assault and seized 3 cities along Yunding's border, and the Yunding monarch demanded he repeat it. He snarled that Wu Tian had first killed his envoy and now declared war, so he would kill him, and the soldier screamed as he choked to death. The Yunding monarch's breath came heavy, and Mieshi told him to head over. The Yunding monarch vowed Wu Tian must die, and though they had failed to recruit him, killing him could at least mend the loss of destiny. They immediately shot into the sky and streaked over the city. The system's voice chimed in to congratulate the host, informing him that a Sect outer disciple had made a name for himself, awarding 2 fate points, which struck a critical and doubled to 4, bringing the total to 6, and Yifeng blinked in puzzlement as he asked who had earned him those points. He then guessed it must have been Wu Tian. He muttered that the little chick was nothing but a bandit and pimp, and wondered what sort of reputation he could possibly earn, then asked if he had robbed no villages. He waved it off, saying the chick had grown up and should walk his own path, and decided to go for a stroll. Later, several people dashed in panic while he strolled calmly down a tiled street between buildings. He remarked that the atmosphere felt off. After hearing this nation was attacking another powerful empire, he remarked that the monarch here had clearly lost his mind. He told the others to hurry and pack since they were fleeing. He then thanked Yuanjing for her care and said they would meet again, while she stayed quiet, in disappointment. She asked herself if he was leaving so abruptly, and reflected that after all their time together there was not the faintest hint of love, and he had not even looked back. Yuan Longtian told his daughter that she and the senior belonged to different worlds, and that someone like him was beyond their reach, and she replied that she understood. She told herself to forget him, and gave a bitter smile in silence. Meanwhile, Wu Qian laughed that another city had fallen while gazing down from the sky. A minister asked if they were making too big a scene, and warned there would be no return after this, but Wu Tian scoffed with ambition, declaring that with his master and brother behind him, he feared nothing. The minister was about to chide himself for fretting again when a soldier suddenly arrived to report. He said their spies confirmed that the Yunding Empire had dispatched a powerful expert named Mieshi, and that he had information on the man, and Wu Tian's interest sparked. He wondered silently if Mieshi's strength was unknown, and perhaps matched that of Yunding's monarch. Admitting it was no longer something he could handle alone, it seemed time to seek his master's or elder brother's help. The minister figured the power that Senior showed last time was downright astonishing, and now they finally got to witness it again, while another remarked that victory was already in sight, but the communication token in his hand started beeping. Then it let out a long beep, while the rest kept quiet. Wu Tian remarked that master and elder brother usually had no interest in worldly affairs, so ignoring the jade slip was normal, then told a soldier to rush to Yuan City to inform them, and the soldier agreed. Wu Tian urged everyone to meditate with him and wait for his master's arrival. After the night passed, they all opened their eyes. Wu Tian spotted a figure in the sky and blurted in surprise that it was Mieshi. Mieshi, in turn, regarded them with pure contempt. Wu Tian figured he was even stronger than expected, and the master and elder brother still had not shown up. But knowing how the master plotted things, it had to be deliberate. Mieshi pressed him to confirm if he was Wu Tian, and he confirmed. Mieshi approved and told him to go to hell. Wu Tian roared as Mieshi launched a massive strike. Wu Tian reacted with shock. The ground shook with a heavy impact when Mieshi hit. 2 ministers called out to Wu Tian, and he told them not to panic since Mieshi couldn't kill him. Mieshi remarked that while dodging was true, how could someone beaten like this still have that kind of confidence? Wu Tian said he didn't mind explaining and wasn't afraid because he had his master and elder brother behind him. His master excelled in strategy, so Mieshi's arrival and his current predicament were all part of that plan. Mieshi figured that ever since the Shanjiang Primal Chaos Monument, someone had been interfering and wondered if this was the person Wu Tian meant. A person able to sway heavenly destiny was no ordinary figure and needed careful attention. Suddenly, everyone tensed when they noticed the soldier approaching. Wu Tian laughed and claimed his master and elder brother would be there soon. Mieshi sensed no other aura, wondered if the other was an expert, and asked where. While the soldier called to the monarch and Wu Tian told him to quickly say where his master and elder brother were. The soldier reported that Senior and Lord Skull had left last night, likely already gone from the Wu Tian Empire, and Wu Tian froze in shock. He silently questioned why his master had left, considered it might be a plan, and wondered if his master still supported him. Mieshi asked if that was all. He figured Yifeng was some kind of expert, and now Wu Tian had wasted his time, so he should die. Wu Tian shouted to his master, asking why he hinted at attacking the Yunding Empire only to leave, admitting he didn't like it and didn't want it. A deafening boom followed as Mieshi's attack slammed into him. Wu Tian emerged soot-stained, surrounded by smoke and cracks. Several ministers cried out to the monarch in tears, while Mieshi scoffed and flew off. Half a day later, peace returned to the Yunding Empire. The Yunding monarch figured this meant no more surprises, and Mieshi declared this was the fate of those who opposed them. While the Yunding monarch remarked that with Wu Tian dead, the lost destiny must have returned, Mieshi told him to wait because destiny's shift was delayed. Suddenly, he announced it had finally returned and admitted it hadn't been easy. While the Yunding monarch said that although time was lost, as long as it was regained, fullness was inevitable. Mieshi told him to hurry and follow the envoy's heavenly book instructions for the next task, and the Yunding monarch agreed, warning that further delays would anger the envoy and the lord. A buzz from the destiny pillar drew their attention. Mieshi questioned why the immortal pillar of destiny was showing another omen, and the Yunding monarch asked if something else was going wrong. He ordered soldiers to recheck everything tied to destiny, and they agreed. 2 hours later, the soldier reported no changes to destiny-related matters, and the Yunding monarch dismissed him. He remarked that nothing seemed different, so maybe it was a good thing, and Mieshi reacted with surprise. The Yunding monarch noted that destiny could shift not just from human actions, but also from events like a hidden great secret realm appearing, a high-level immortal's abode being unearthed, or a prodigy being born. And this time, the omen likely meant such an event, and would bring them fortune. Mieshi remarked that it was a blessing in disguise, and the Yunding monarch muttered that judging from this omen, the changes ahead might be far from small. A sudden buzz rippled through and they both braced, knowing it was here. Mieshi commented that it was finally about to be fulfilled, and the Yunding monarch declared that the Lord's supreme reward was on its way. Yet another piece of the pillar vanished. At Wu Tian's tomb, several ministers wept uncontrollably. Wu Tian suddenly broke into laughter as bursts of energy and booming shockwaves erupted, tearing apart his tomb. His foot slammed onto the ground. He marveled that the Yunding Empire had actually helped him unlock his hidden physique, the immortal body, and with it, each death meant another life, each resurrection multiplying his power tenfold. One minister claimed it was the Lord Monarch's ghost, another urged silence because the monarch had returned, and soon they all shouted "Long live the monarch," while Wu Tian laughed and told them to rise. He instructed them to find the finest craftsman for his master to forge a golden stone statue at 10,000 times scale. And after capturing the Yunding Empire, he would place it in the imperial city for hundreds of millions to admire. A minister questioned if his master had abandoned him and nearly caused his death, and another echoed why he would honor such a person. Wu Tian barked for silence, demanded how they dared to question his master, and struck the minister, sending him coughing blood. He ordered that minister thrown into the heavenly prison for sentencing. He understood their doubts, but knew all of this had been arranged by his master. The ministers reacted with shock. Wu Tian claimed his master must have known of his immortal body and set this up, and recalling past events, he realized his master had hinted all along he would fight the Yunding Empire to the death to trigger near death and awaken it. So the master never abandoned him and had done it all for him. One minister admitted it turned out to be true and begged forgiveness. Another agreed upon reflection that they had misjudged the senior, and another called themselves a fool. Wu Tian confessed he had wrongly blamed the master, and the ministers admitted they were sinners. So Wu Tian asked if they believed a statue should be raised in the master's honor for such kindness, and they agreed it should. A minister added that not only should the statue be made, but every city in the Wu Tian Empire should have one of the senior, and his deeds should be recorded in textbooks for future generations to learn of his great kindness. Wu Tian replied that was fine, but a statue was still just a statue and the master's will came first. So he commanded the attack on the Yunding Empire to resume, and the ministers roared in agreement. Meanwhile, the Yunding monarch pressed for the reason. A soldier burst in, reporting Wu Tian had come back to life, and the Yunding monarch reacted in disbelief, while the soldier went on that Wu Tian had awakened an immortal physique, grew stronger with resurrection, and had already taken 10 cities in a row. The Yunding monarch cried out in shock and coughed up blood. Mieshi concluded that Wu Tian remained the problem, and the Yunding monarch admitted he had heard of such a physique and that Wu Tian was truly a heaven-chosen one. So it was no wonder he struck such a blow to their destiny. Mieshi asserted that Wu Tian must still die as the physique was not completely invincible, so with enough strength he could still be ended, and the lost destiny reclaimed. After half a month, news of the Wu Tian Empire's assault on the Yunding Empire spread across the Void Realm. During this time, Mieshi killed Wu Tian again by smashing him to pieces, but something happened that he never expected. Wu Tian returned again with even greater strength, and the Wu Tian Empire now controlled the entire Yunding border. Once more, the immortal pillar of destiny diminished, and the Yunding monarch noted it had grown thin and short. He called for the kill, and Mieshi demanded Wu Tian's death. He unleashed 6 meridian divine swords, a helix ball, and a spirit ball, but Wu Tian only got obliterated while laughing. Mieshi exhaled as his blood pressure eased, and the Yunding monarch chuckled that it was finally over. Then an explosive burst flared, and their eyes widened at the sight. Wu Tian stood beneath a light pouring from above, and both let loose a vicious curse, their knees buckling instantly. Mieshi pressed what to do and what they were supposed to do. The Yunding monarch retorted how could he possibly know what to do when Wu Tian could not be stopped, and the worth of destiny had sunk so low that he could not even bear to look at it. Yesterday, just when Yunding and Mieshi assumed the enemy had been finished, Wu Tian's body knitted itself back together, and he rose again with a terrifying surge of power. And without a second thought, the two of them bolted in fear that killing him a few more times would result in Wu Tian wiping them out instantly. Just yesterday, the envoy had sent a message inquiring about the Immortal Pillar of Destiny, and he did not dare reveal the truth. And if the envoy learned that within only a few months the Immortal Pillar of Destiny had plunged instead of risen, they would certainly kill them. Mieshi remarked that Wu Tian was now ruling the Wu Tian Empire and had taken half of the country's land. And as the count of cities in the country kept shrinking, so too did the destiny. Then he pushed again what should be done. Yunding declared that there was someone who could hold Wu Tian back long enough for them to restore the Immortal Pillar of Destiny, and Mieshi urged that he should hurry to find this person. Yunding revealed that he had already reached out, and that person was now secluded beneath his imperial palace. He explained that it would take another 7 days to emerge, and Mieshi echoed in shock that it would really be 7 days. He pointed out that with Wu Tian's current speed, in 7 days, Wu Tian might already be pounding the imperial city, and Yunding told him to steady himself and said he would dispatch experts to stall Wu Tian first, and even if they could not defeat him, holding him off for 7 days should not be impossible. He ordered that the sect masters be used first to restrain Wu Tian and wait for that person to emerge from seclusion, and this one man alone could lead his Yunding army to push back Wu Tian and even reclaim lost territories. And once Wu Tian was annihilated, all destiny lost because of him would return. Suddenly, a soldier hailed the Lord Monarch, and Yunding welcomed him just in time, then told him to heed his command and pass it down. Yunding commanded that the Mist Sect, Flame Sect, Windfire Sect, and Tianyi Sect in the Yunding Empire immediately send out their disciples to halt Wu Tian's advance, and the soldier confessed that he could not do so. He reported that the Flame Sect had already been destroyed by the Mist Sect, and that the Windfire Sect had been swallowed by the Tianyi Sect. Yunding instructed him to tell the Mist Sect and Tianyi Sect to bring their disciples, and the soldier admitted his report was not finished yet. He added that after the Mist Sect and Tianyi Sect had eradicated the other two sects, they had already defected to the Wu Tian Empire. Mieshi roared and demanded what was wrong with the empire, ranting that they were speaking of the greatest empire in the Void Realm, and now mutineers kept turning, and even Wu Tian could not be checked. And he demanded what exactly the Yunding Empire was doing. Yunding told Mieshi to rein himself in and not be hot-headed, since he truly had not foreseen those sects rebelling, and it was nothing serious because he would simply have an expert come out of seclusion ahead of time. Mieshi pressed who this person was, whether they could block Wu Tian's strike, and whether they would not simply be crushed, since he now doubted everything. Yunding declared that this person was a native of the Yunding Empire, and years ago he had recognized his talent and used the Empire's resources to cultivate him, and now the person stood at the edge of a breakthrough, which was why he secluded himself beneath the Imperial Palace where a spirit-gathering formation had been placed. This man was a supreme genius whose future would certainly not fall short of their own, and most crucially, his loyalty and sincerity to the Yunding Empire was unmatched. And Mieshi muttered that it sounded good and urged him to summon the man out quickly. The sky suddenly thundered. They all turned their gaze forward as the deafening boom erupted. A man brandishing a staff laughed loudly and declared that he, Yuan Zun, had broken through ahead of time. He was the heavenly genius of the Yunding Empire. Yunding laughed with delight and exclaimed that even heaven was aiding him, and he had been about to seek Yuan Zun, yet Yuan Zun had already broken through and stepped out early. He introduced himself as Yuan Zun, paying respect to the monarch, and Yunding told him he could skip formal bows and rise. He remarked that he was looking for Yuan Zun this time, and Yuan Zun declared that he already knew. Anyone who crossed the Yunding must be punished. He shot into the sky at once. Yuanzun's form blazed with a purple aura while his expression radiated resolve. Yunding inquired how it seemed, and Mieshi acknowledged that the kid was indeed impressive, and his power truly formidable. He had not expected that Yunding still concealed such a talent in their grasp, to which Yunding responded that the Yunding Empire had endured in this world for so long not without cause, and he told him to follow the Heavenly Book's guidance and set the plans in motion. A few days later, a blazing pink beam ripped straight into the sky. Mieshi remarked with relief that the destiny had been patched up a fair bit, and Yunding countered that Yuanzun might not manage to slay Wu Tian outright, but he surely had enough strength to keep him pinned down. He figured Yuanzun might have even clawed back some territory lost in Yunding, but then a soldier burst out with a shout that he carried terrible news for the Lord Monarch. Yuanzun had betrayed them, and the revelation jolted both of them into shock. He had not only turned traitor but deliberately unsealed the defensive arrays of every city, throwing the gates wide for Wu Tian's army. Now Wu Tian's troops pressed within 3 cities of the imperial city, and Yunding pressed the soldier on how things had spiraled like this. But the soldier replied it went beyond that, and Yunding demanded to know what more there could be. The soldier revealed that the empire's vassal states, including the Tianlong Empire, the Kangqiang Empire, the Tianhuo Empire, and the Fengyun Empire, had all risen in rebellion one after the other. Each of them had thrown their lot in with Wu Tian's forces. According to a spy's report, the sect masters and monarchs who defected had also merged their strength with Wu Tian's growing army. The defectors assembled with Wu Tian, lit a roaring bonfire, and broke into something they called a square dance, moving with a joy that looked almost mocking. Both Mieshi and Yunding dropped to their knees in despair. They coughed up blood in violent bursts. The spattering liquid sprayed across the soldier's face and left him utterly stunned. The destiny pillar still surged skyward with force, but the pillar abruptly shrank and crashed downward, and Mieshi demanded to know why this collapse had struck. It had taken relentless labor and unfathomable cost, and the immortal pillar of destiny had nearly been ready. Yet instead, this setback landed like a curse. They had strained themselves, following every instruction laid out in the Heavenly Book. Someone clearly tampered with them, and that someone had to be lurking behind the scenes. From the very beginning of his work on the Xianzhang Primal Chaos Monument, he had sensed sabotage. Otherwise, such disasters could not have piled up. Yunding admitted that it looked that way and urged they uncover the culprit, or else their entire effort might collapse. Mieshi commanded the quick setup of a formation, declaring he would harness both the formation's strength and the astral power bestowed by the Lord to track down whoever orchestrated this, because a hidden manipulator would surely have left traces. Cultivators lined up with hands folded in ritual pose. Several more stepped forward and mirrored the same stance. Yunding stood at the fore, ordering the formation to rise. Bright streams of energy erupted from multiple cultivators, while Mieshi planted himself in the midst of their surge. He invoked the astral power to begin the deduction. He glimpsed a giant beast with gaping jaws, and in front of it, 2 figures materialized. Yuanzun sat calmly cross-legged in meditation. Wu Tian loomed smiling, while 2 others bent their knees in surrender before him. Mieshi dismissed it, grumbling that none of these were the one he sought, that they were merely surface enemies, and not the hidden hand. Yet even this vision provided a clue, because the shifting of destiny intertwined tightly with these figures, meaning the true manipulator must have been tied to them somehow. He urged everyone to pour in their strength, promising they were nearly at the revelation of the mastermind. Yunding proclaimed that once the work finished, generous rewards would flow to them all, so they must endure. All at once, a figure manifested, and Mieshi promised the unveiling was imminent. He declared that he saw it, the outline of spiky hair cut sharp against the sky. Feet in flashy shoes and striped socks glittered with sparkles around them. Skullgreat turned to Aoqing and pressed how he looked, and Aoqing remarked that he looked impossibly handsome. Skullgreat broke into booming laughter while Centipede leaned lazy against a tree. Bear snoozed by another tree, his expression calm with relief. Yunding let out a laugh, announcing that they had found the culprits, that he had wondered what mighty figure it could be, but it turned out to be 4 of them. And the other cultivators chorused congratulations to both Lord Monarch and Lord Mieshi. Mieshi celebrated that it was excellent, worth the immense power they had drained. But unease tugged at him because those 3 demons and that strangely dressed one stirred a nagging familiarity, as if he had crossed paths before, and he muttered to dismiss it, blaming nerves, while Skullgreat teased him about which girl he was flirting with this time. Yunding pressed what action they should take, and Mieshi declared that they could not allow such figures to slip away, since 3 demons and 1 human tied into destiny meant they were extraordinary and dangerous, their identities cloaked beyond appearances alone. He judged it unwise to confront them directly, but Yunding calmed him, insisting he had already laid out a plan. Beneath the Yunding underground palace stretched a natural killing formation, its environment brutal and stripped of spiritual energy. Its chambers haunted by dead spirits from antiquity, such that even 2 people would collapse within 7 days. All they had to do was capture them, bind them with the formation, then employ the nation's treasures to transfer them straight into the underground palace killing grounds. In that way, those 4 troublesome beasts would surely perish. Mieshi roared with laughter and exulted that destiny's restoration lay just around the corner. Meanwhile, in the Flower Tower, Aoqing remarked that Skull Great was really outrageous with that kind of boldness. He actually swiped 10 gold coins straight from the master, and if the master caught wind of it, he would definitely be finished. While Skull Great chuckled that dying under a peony flower and turning into a ghost sounded pretty romantic. Besides, it was not going to be some huge deal if they did not return for the moment, so they ought to just move along. Later, he grabbed a young miss and burst into laughter, saying this was absolutely wonderful. But 2 guards jolted in shock as a massive group suddenly appeared in front of the building. Yunding, with a cluster of cultivators at his back, triggered the concealment barrier to rise. Mishi pressed about how the arrangement of the formation was coming along, and Yunding replied it would be done in just a breath more, with no chance for anyone to escape, and once the transmission formation lit up, those 4 idiots would be shoved straight into the underground palace killing array, while Mieshi nodded that this was good. Yunding sneered that the funny part was those fools on the brink of death still did not realize it, and he could hardly believe they were still carousing in that little red building like clowns. While Mieshi warned him not to celebrate too soon because until the last instant, no one knew what twists might come. Yunding grumbled that his face did not look convincing. Mieshi chuckled and urged him to just activate the formation already. Meanwhile, Skull Great roared with laughter and shouted to keep singing and dancing. He stood flaunting himself among women as radiant light swirled, and he hollered to the heavens about what on earth was happening. He cried out to the ladies. Aoqing groaned that it was happening too fast, and he felt like puking. Centipede moaned that he had lost a leg and begged his brother to help him look for it, while Bear kept snoring and muttered about a big bear and bald-headed Chang chopping trees again. Yunding bellowed with laughter, mocking that their gibberish at death's edge was hilarious. Meshi observed that they had succeeded, but pressed if the underground palace killing formation was absolutely secure. Yunding assured him to rest easy and explained that the killing formation was a relic left from several epochs ago, after the Great Destruction had twisted into a barren little world of its own and seethed with countless dead spirits, making it nothing but lifeless doom. Most importantly, he also dispatched his 7 female disciples to guard its rim. And Mieshi confirmed if those were the ones blessed with outstanding talent and born with the natural charm body, known as the Yunding 7 Beauties. Yunding affirmed that was right, adding they would report immediately if anything happened. And Mieshi approved that this was excellent and truly a cunning move as both broke into laughter. In a bleak forest, Bear muttered that it looks like they had been captured. Inside the desolate killing formation, Centipede urged them to relax because with Big Brother around, everything would be fine. And Aoqing commented that the place seemed rather intriguing, and since Big Brother had lifted the gold coins and needed somewhere to lay low, it fit perfectly. He asked what his brother thought, and Skull Great agreed, but added that even if they wanted to hide out, they still needed some fun. Aoqing pressed him to say quickly what kind of fun, and Skull Great replied they should scout for it first. His hand clamped onto a purple spirit. The spirit shrieked, and Aoqing shouted in horror that it was a ghost. The spirit begged to be released, claiming he was a subordinate of the greatest undead spirit king in this barren world, and warned that the spirit king would never spare him if he was not let go. He asked if the other one was the spirit king being mentioned, and the spirit jolted with surprise and questioned how the undead king could manage that. The spirit cursed at him to shut up and chomped the smaller one in a single gulp, which screamed in agony. The spirit groveled to his lord that he did not recognize him, and Skull Great remarked that he was pretty quick-witted. The spirit thanked his lord and reasoned that they should have no quarrel now. He had been happily devouring other undead until he was suddenly snatched, and that grab had shredded at least 3 centuries of cultivation. But this drove home to him that the figure in front of him must not be crossed. So he addressed them as lords, wondered what brought them here, and introduced himself as the mightiest undead spirit in the barren world. He clarified he was not boasting of his strength because in front of his lords he was nothing but a speck. Added that if there was a need, he could lend a little help, and Skullgreat answered that they were only on vacation here and would leave after a few days. But this scumbag admired him way too much and cheerfully declared he would handle their needs for a few days. So Spirit replied with a calm assurance that there was no problem at all and vowed to do his utmost as a host while offering them anything they wanted. And Skullgreat then leaned in and mentioned that he had something to ask. He pressed him on whether he could arrange some girls for them, especially the type that fought with fire in their veins. And Spirit shot back by asking where in the world they expected to find girls while stuck in their own state. Skullgreat prodded further by asking how they normally dealt with their urges without women, and Spirit shut him down, telling him not to bring it up since he had abstained for countless epochs. Skullgreat conceded with a nod that he understood that sort of suffering, but he still pushed his point, explaining that even if Spirit could not do it with the body, he had to at least find some comfort for the mind. And Spirit expressed gratitude for those teachings. He had already brewed up an idea. Outside that barren world there lingered 7 girls, pale-skinned, beautiful, and outrageously flamboyant, and Skullgreat reacted with genuine surprise. Spirit swore it was true, claiming the 7 often sat at the edge of the barren world to cultivate and would sometimes step inside to train, but he admitted he lacked the nerve to ever approach, and Skullgreat repeated in a rumble that they were indeed fair-skinned and beautiful. Spirit asked if he should march over and capture them since his lord had a taste for it, and Skullgreat waved it off by telling him to hold back until he tidied himself up. He turned to Aoqing to inspect him and demanded how he looked today, and Aoqing responded that it was perfect, yet noted a faint lack of details. He hollered at his brothers to fix it, and then he yanked up his pant leg. The bear plucked a stray thread right off the fabric. Centipede dragged his finger across the shirt and marked a heart into it. Aoqing announced it finished and flawless, declaring him now the most handsome man alive, and Skullgreat burst out laughing, while Spirit remarked that he did look truly handsome, so they should go capture those girls for him. The edge of the barren world brimmed with life. 7 women rested on the grass with their eyes shut in meditation. Red mentioned that those people had been stuck inside for over 20 hours and wondered how they were faring. Greed replied that it was uncertain if they still clung to life or had already fallen to the undead since the 7 sisters rarely lasted even an hour in there for training, let alone pushing deeper. Blue reminded them that it was smarter not to underestimate the enemy because even their master treated those enemies with grave caution. Red exhaled heavily, and Blue pressed her on why she sighed. Red admitted that she was thinking how they were no different from those people, trapped inside a cage and never free to leave. The only change was that those people were stuck inside the barren world while they were stuck outside it. Black announced that something was moving. Red noted that the aura felt incredibly strong and unnervingly strange, and Blue wondered aloud if it might be the legendary Spirit King hiding in the barren world. Black said his target seemed to be them, and Purple demanded how such a thing could break the world itself. A tornado ripped out of nowhere and shredded the lash forest. A droplet of liquid slipped from the edge of a branch. It splashed across her face as she still lay with her eyes closed. Purple cried out for the sisters to wake. Black asked if that was truly the barren world, while Purple asked how they ended up pulled into the barren world. And Red recalled that it was the Spirit King inside who had struck against them. Skullgreat announced with delight that the 7 young ladies had awakened and then ordered Spirit to hurry, arrange things, and set an atmosphere. Spirit agreed instantly and barked for the atmosphere group to move. Several spirits manifested, and the 7 women recalled in shock. Spirit called the music group to begin as well, and several spirits raised their voices in song. Green questioned what this twisted play was, and Red confessed that it felt terrifying. Lightning cracked through the rolling clouds above. It speared downward while the women screamed in fear. Skullgreat proclaimed it an honor to meet 7 young ladies. He introduced himself as Skullgreat, and with a thunderous explosion in the heavens, the scumbag appeared in a blinding entrance, and the women declared that the most frightening one had arrived. Skullgreat remarked that the stars blazed fiercely tonight, and the women jolted in surprise. He first declared that he loved her, then clumsily corrected himself and proclaimed that his heart brimmed with love for her. He He pressed the beauties on whether they wanted to dance with this scumbag under the stars, while they figured he was the shorty in the black robe tossed in by the master. It had been more than 10 hours, and he remained safe and sound. And he even subdued the most powerful undead spirit king who ruled life and death within this killing formation. He stood simply beyond imagination in strength. Skull Great murmured that this night was intoxicating, and his heart reeled like it was drunk, then teased the beauties if they felt the same thrill. Black pressed what they should do, and Red admitted that the danger of this undead killing formation was hidden from others, but painfully clear to them. Their cultivation level was not low, but they could not even linger at the edge of this killing formation for an hour. Yet this person was unfathomable, and to contend with him was like striking a stone with an egg. While Black probed if she carried any plan, Red urged that they should join him. Black muttered that if the master discovered it, the 7 of them would undoubtedly die. And Red countered that not only had this person survived inside, but he also subdued the undead king, so that feet alone made him tower over the master. This brother came off so charming and elegant, and she had never met anyone like him before, while the other women scoffed that the 7th sister mutinied too quickly. Red exclaimed that Brother Skull was so sexy, and then groaned in pain while clutching her hand. She whimpered that Big Brother's chest was so unyielding her little hands could not bear it, and begged him to blow on it quickly, while Skull Great agreed with great pleasure. She gasped in shock. She was about to break through. Blue exclaimed she became a mysterious immortal, and Purple marveled that it took tens of thousands of years for heavenly immortals to climb to golden immortal, but reaching mysterious immortal directly happened in just one blow. So Yellow pressed what they should do. Purple reasoned that the 7th sister was right, as they should grab advantages and steer away from disadvantages. If they stalled now, he would only hold the 7th sister in his gaze. Black grumbled that she accidentally got sand in her eyes just now and pleaded for Skull Great to blow it away, while Skull Great beckoned them to come. 3 days and 3 nights later, Yellow whined that she could not endure anymore, and Green admitted she could not endure either. Spirit muttered that they should take a break, and warned that if he did not stop, he would end up killing those little girls. Skull Great remarked that their bodies were far too weak, and Spirit confessed that no one could ever compare with the Big Brother who could shake the 9 heavens with his might alone. So he only fretted the girls were exhausted, and pressed what would happen if something broke them. Skull Great conceded that it made sense. He urged the beauties to rest, and they reckoned he was simply too good at dancing. Later, a mound of earth jutted out suddenly. Centipede cheered that it was fantastic news, and Skull Great demanded what happened. Centipede explained he just caught the scent of money in the mud, so Skull Great pressed where, and Centipede revealed it was right in the southeast of the barren world and asked if they should dig into it. Skull Great snapped absolutely and that they should head there, and others cried out in shock as his power ripped through the sky. The array shattered in an instant. Purple gawked if he demolished the killing formation that had stayed unbreakable for countless epochs with just a point at the sky, and Black admitted he really crushed it. Spirit remarked that the air carried a refreshing bite, and after being trapped for countless epochs, he never imagined he would breathe it again. But his body started melting away in front of them. He muttered that the light was killing him, and confessed it was his deepest regret that he could do nothing for his big brother who was handsome, charismatic, and omnipotent. Before bidding farewell to him, Skull Great jabbed a finger toward him to restrain him, and pressed that they should go hunt for gold coins. It was the rule and law of heaven that undead spirits could not gaze upon the light. Yet with a flick of his hand he had shattered it all, and Spirit called out for them to wait. Later they tramped to the southeast of the barren land. Skull Great remarked that the place reeked with the scent of gold coins. A barrier loomed there, weighted with crushing pressure. But Skull Great pointed as the barrier exploded apart while the others cheered with glee. A glare bounced ahead and forced them to squint hard. The women pressed if this was the legendary treasure hoard of the Yunding Empire since its founding, as they seemed impossibly wealthy. Ao Ching cried out for Big Brother and began to voice something, but he was already gone. He yelled Big Brother while staring at him buried headfirst in the mountain of gold. Skull Great burst into laughter and declared they were rich, and Ao Ching shouted that in the future they would seize as many women as they wanted, while Centipede vowed to summon a myriad of them, get high, and dance in madness. Skull Great barked at them to get back to work, claiming they would craft 1,000 sets of gold teeth, while Ao Ching fretted aloud if gold teeth would be too flashy and worried that the master might spot them and rip them out. Skull Great nodded that it made sense again and again. while Spirit puzzled over what Big Brother was doing, how he could be fixated on gold coins, and whether he should not pay more attention to the immortal item lying to the side. The women instead focused on a glowing jar, wondering if this was the legendary relic. Skull Great demanded why that shattered bottle still floated there blocking the path, while the women shrieked in alarm and Spirit groaned in unease. But Skull Great commanded Spirit to help haul the gold coins, boasting that now they were rich they could have as many women as they wanted, and Spirit cackled yes again and again, echoing they were rich, while Skull Great warned him to remember his brother's decree that nothing surpassed money. Spirit spotted a branch and exclaimed that it belonged to a Taoist immortal who ascended to heaven epochs ago. But Ching sneered that the scrap was hogging space, while Spirit hacked out coughs and heavy disappointment. Ching snapped that no gold coins lay there and it was nothing but rotting trash blocking the road. So Skull Great cursed what the hell and ordered Bear to help smash all the junk while everyone chorused what a waste. Centipede griped that this rag also blocked the way, but Purple offered to blast it apart, while Spirit warned he might not understand these things. Skull Great waved them off, not to fret while they all gaped in surprise. He quipped that 7 beauties should sit tight and asked how he could let them slog at hard labor, while they insisted it was no trouble at all. Skull Great paused in thought while Red admitted that after those words she suddenly felt drained, and Purple agreed with a weary same here. They lined up together and chanted in repetition. Skull Great pointed and commanded go there and that they were done, while the 3 responded it was all right. Purple clutched an item and apologized to the master, as the 7 sisters stuffed their storage rings with odd scraps and ends while Red exclaimed over her find, and Green chimed that this one was not bad.